Welcome one and all to episode 14 of the Coast AFL Podcast Blaze. Yes, I'm back. My 2-week holiday in Canada is finally over. I'm home. I go back to work when this podcast goes live on Wednesday. So that's going to be fun. But for now, it is a Tuesday as we're recording this, and we're going to go through the Sir Doug Nicholls Round that has just gone, the experience of Dreamtime, although we might not touch on it that much, considering Richmond are not very good and Essendon are great. We shall see. We'll also touch on the more interesting games over the week that has just gone, and we will also have a look at the week ahead. So let's get stuck into it. How are you doing, Mr. Psyrick? How was the 2 weeks without me?
Not too bad, not too bad. I missed you, especially in recording.
I'm
Also
just being
outside of it, I meant, to be fair, we could chat. Like, you're on the Discord occasionally, so we got still good footy chat and still good catching up with you. But yeah, no. Otherwise, just been finally got some rain in WA, which is
That's good.
rare. It's
That
like
is
the
rare.
first time
Very,
it's rained, and it's like 4 days left of autumn. So
it's a very dry country. The very dry
it
side of the
is.
country.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think like the wedding went a while because we haven't actually done this together in a while because
Yeah,
before
the
that it
last
was
thing we talked about was you going away and me having to do the podcast with Snap.
Snapjack, who did a fantastic job, by the way. I'm very sorry, I forgot to mention that on the first episode.
No, you're good. You're
But yes,
good.
that was a very good one. And yeah, just glad to be back, ready to talk about football with my friend.
I'm very glad to be back. Tipping was pretty interesting for me whilst I was gone because I got one perfect round and almost a second perfect round without even watching any of the games.
You know what was though? It's
Mm.
the expert analysis provided you by the Coast Podcast.
Very true. Very true. People should listen to it more often.
Theoretically, it means I should have got 9, so maybe it wasn't. But you know,
Hey, sometimes you never
it's
know.
like tip as I say, not tip as I do.
Yeah, exactly right. In terms of what I got up to whilst I was in Canada, things that I bought, etc. I'm debating on making a second video about that, and that will probably end up just going up on the Coast to Coast AFL podcast channel anyway. We'll see how that goes. But until that happens, we are here to talk about the footy. And from what I saw from updates on the app, highlights on the socials, it was an interesting week. So, do you want to get stuck into it?
Yeah. There was a lot of interesting games, especially the first two. I thought they were going to be very close, and honestly, they both delivered. We're going to start with the Western Bulldogs and Sydney at Marvel Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
The Bulldogs definitely had a bit more bite with their bark tonight as they put up a lot of good metrics to the now flag favourite Sydney, but a very efficient Sydney would fly away from the jaws of defeat at a close contest at Marvel Stadium. The Bulldogs are very strong early, dominating the clearances and inside 50s, but Sydney managed to score 5 scores from 9 inside 50s as they just lose the quarter by a couple of points.
Mm-hmm.
The Bulldogs would have a putrid bit of luck with Aaron Norton going down
I
with a
did see
PCL
that.
injury.
That was very unlucky for
Yeah,
them.
100%. It looked a lot worse live, so we're very thankful it was just PCL, but it's still going to take, I think, 4 to 6 to heal. Ed Richards as well. He was really damaging, so much so that James Jordan had to switch his tag to him.
Mm-hmm.
He had 18 possessions, 4 clearances, and 17 score involvements for the half before he got injured with concussion, which left them at 2 on the bench, with Anthony Scott's also subbed off in the opening quarter with a concussion as well.
That's unlucky.
So not very lucky, but a very brave performance. Despite all this, their contested dominance would their contested dominance would give them the lead as they become the only team other than West Coast, surprisingly enough, to hold a halftime lead against Sydney. Late in the third, though, Sydney went on a 6-1 run, and the game looked all but over. As it looked like the Doggies is sort of kicked themselves out of it. Kicked a lot of behinds, as we'll see with the score coming up.
Mm-hmm.
With set shot kicking, but they rallied late despite their injuries. But of course, the controversial 15-metre penalty gave McLean an easy goal to seal it up, and it would be one of 5 goals kicked from free kicks for Sydney, as they would win 12-16, 88 to 16-6, 102.
I don't.
As a
Looking at that scoreline, I don't think it really was the free kicks that won it for Sydney. I think the doggies were just wasteful up forward.
Look, they were, but the momentum was quite real. Like, I didn't actually watch the full game. I was only there for the last quarter because I was doing something with my friend. But
Mm-hmm.
like and the Bulldogs are a bit like that. They're a very momentum-based team. I'm gonna do a bit of a segment on them in a second. But yeah, honestly, they did. It was really it was like the air out of the sails, you know what I mean? Like, it's not as if, they didn't have their chances or anything, but that was just one of the things that, like, put it to bed. And it really should have been, a very close game.
Yeah.
Sydney, I wouldn't count themselves lucky, like, because they had a lot of good performances. But yeah, as I said, the Bulldogs were pretty controlling, I would say. As I said, Sydney were just, very, and I'll say this for a lot of teams, like on the wing, especially, their movement was terrific. They didn't need a lot of possessions to get efficient scoring, whereas, the Dogs, I won't quite say they're one of the more wasteful teams going inside 450, but yeah, that set shot conversion, it wasn't great.
Yeah, it doesn't look very pretty.
Yeah, so in terms of the important players, Warner got 25 disposals, 11 contested, 4 tackles, 3 marks inside 50, 10 score involvements, and 4 goals straight. Just as people are like locking Heaney for the Brownlow, Warner looks to pinch a few votes for him. It might be a bit like Goulden last year, where he's like might find himself a bit behind.
Speaking
because of that, but...
Mr. Errol Goulden.
Yeah, 25 disposals, 7 tackles, 500 meters gains, 9 intercepts on the wing, just so damaging. And as I said, like, I'm going to talk about it in a bit, but, like, Warner had a lot more direct scoring impact, but Goulden sort of went both ways, which, is harder to pick up on the wing when they have that sort of game. And obviously, for much of it, I watched the highlight, but this was really, a solid thing. Joining him as well, Blakey, 20 disposals, all effective, 6 intercepts and 10 1%ers. So they really had good wing movement. And for the Bulldogs, Traw had 30 disposals, 15 contested, 6 clearances, 6 score involvements, 12 ground bob gets.
Very nice.
Again, he bobs. Yeah, he's been bobbing up. Sometimes he's really, really solid. And other times he just provides enough. So, very solid there. And I've just lumped them all together. We're going the Rileys. Riley Garcia, 18 disposals, 6 score involvements, 4 clearances, 2.1 scoring.
Not bad.
Riley West, 5 tackles, inside 50, out of 6 for the entire night. Sorry, he did 6 tackles and 5 of them were inside 50. 8 score involvements, 1 goal, 2. And Sanders on the wing, although he was probably beaten by, I think he was on Goulden. He's still got 20 disposals himself, 6 score involvements and 5 tackles. The Bulldogs backline was still pretty good. A lot of intercepts. And Jamara Ugle-Hagan up forward. He kicked 3 goals too. 4 marks inside 50. He is that threat, especially with Norton going down. They've sort of had to battle on their own for a bit.
Yep.
And they're still providing a bit. So yeah, that's just sort of like the game feel. And
considering
I want...
how they've performed over the past couple of weeks, like, this is...
Yeah.
Despite it being a loss, being able to show up against Sydney is still a good outing for them.
Yeah, and, as I said, that's the real concerning. Like, if this loss hadn't come on a lot more disappointing performances, like the loss of against Hawthorn a couple of weeks ago, the belting, well, pretty much belting they had against Essendon, as I said, you would say, the Bulldogs are in the right track, and they've definitely been a bit better since the Hawthorn game. But yeah, as I said, it's just they feel a bit behind.
Yeah, it's not really enough for them at the moment.
Yeah. So, as I've been alluding to, I've done, a bit of a dive because they've had all types of performances this year. They've been belted a couple of times. They've had some good and bad performances against strong and weak teams.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to see if there was any consistency between their wins and losses. Shout out to someone who had Emily Brees, who does ELO ratings. Wheelo ratings, that site where I got a lot of this from.
Yeah.
But basically, they're the third best scoring attack, just on points in the league. They're the fourth best inside 50 differential in the league, so they get more inside 50s than their opponents most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And still in the top 8 in terms of score against, so they're not a woeful defense on pure,
They're not getting massively outscored.
No, exactly. So they sit a couple of games outside the top 8 right now. And a lot has been said about their set shot accuracy. Right now, they're in the top 3 in terms of behinds generated, and middle of the road in terms of accuracy. So it's pretty bad. A lot of their accurate games has tended to be towards their wins. Not always, but when they get easy looks, they tend to convert a lot.
Yeah, makes sense.
So look, there's no doubt the behinds are killing the Bulldogs, but I think also, because you see a few teams like this, like Port Adelaide, for instance, they're very wasteful. They've got more behinds than the Bulldogs, worse accuracy. But, they're not, they're still bad defensively, but they're not quite as bad as the Bulldogs obviously are performing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the main things, and Collingwood especially, if you're going to have this work, I think the real flaw in the Bulldogs is that they struggle to both attack and defend end-to-end footy, and it starts obviously from their forward half.
Yeah.
So despite a lot of the Bulldogs having great inside midfield work, great clearances, they've mainly been able to get positive differentials no matter in winning or losing the games. But in 7 out of their 10 games, when they've conceded more points from their back half, from intercepts, and even more simple, they dominate. Other teams dominate scores from intercepts in their wins, and they concede. And on the flip side, if they can get that positive, they win themselves. So what that's basically saying is that their intercept game is actually probably a stronger indicator of whether they win or lose, and a lot of that comes from pressure around the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the teams where they lose, like Melbourne's, Dons, Fremantle, Sydney, three of those teams are brilliant against defending scores from stoppages and scores from back half as well. So, and their kick to handball ratio is pretty solid through all their games, but in their losses, their meter gain goes down considerably. So what's that telling me is in their losses, they really struggle to move the ball from the back half.
Yep.
When you look at the players there, Bailey Dale, their main distributor, has been very solid, but they've had a lot of rotation in back half distribution. So you got Harms, Duray, Daniels, Williams, Johannesson, and Freo, who is looking to be a promising young kid that sort of played a bit on the back, bit on the wing.
Oh, yeah.
But, when you got 5 or 6 different players, and they're all moving about, it's very hard to get that consistency there. And, obviously, a lot of their chains hasn't really gone forward. And as I said, on the wing, you've got Daniels, Gallagher, Harms, and Williams all rotating there. And they're not very tall and they're not very fast either. So they can get a lot of bad matchups there as well. Like Sydney, obviously. Larky's pretty tall. And, what's the other one I'm thinking of? It doesn't matter so much. And the last major point I want to say is that their general pressure isn't part of their game. And why you can get away with that, in terms of this flaw, it's making it worse because 22% of their tackles, of all tackles, are actually inside their 50. So they're the third best tackling inside 50 team, whilst being the fourth worst tackling team overall. And they're very mid at getting these interception swats like earlier. So teams can move the ball against them very easily as well. It's not just that they struggle going forward, it's that they can't defend going out. Obviously, with the new kick-out rule and the amount of behinds that the Bulldogs are generating, other teams just get looks because they can run it out, kick it down into the boundary line,
Yeah.
Kick it to their marks, and then just bang it forward. So no matter how good the Dogs have been offensively, which I think, is even with the accuracy, it's still been enough. Like, by missing all these shots, they're exposing themselves to the weakest part of their game, and they're going to need to do something to fix it because, as we're seeing, like, they've put in some good performances, but it's not converting for them. So unless they, like, convert out their skins, opponents are always going to get good looks and good chains. And yeah, I think the Bulldogs really need to work on it. I don't think it's going to happen this year
No,
because
it probably
obviously
won't
they've
happen
been
this
doing a
year.
lot of moving around. But, I mean, hell, even in the mid-season draft, maybe they can, find a tall or fast player, just roll the dice on them. But yeah, as I said, but it's crazy, because as I said, like the Bulldogs have done a lot of things right with their attack. Their inside midfield unit's been really solid. And as I said, their defense has been forming, like even deep. Alex Keith's been fairly good on return. Biku Karmas, player that we've been really big on.
He's been very solid so far this year.
Exactly. And of course, Liam Jones, another good tall. But, as I said, unlike some teams where, their deep defense is really shaky, but they can transition well on the wing, the Bulldogs are actually opposite to a lot of teams like that. So I just thought that was very interesting. And I think that might give a bit of an insight to why the Bulldogs seem a bit lacking despite being, fairly potent. As I said, it's just you can be as potent as you like, but if the opponents are getting easy looks, you know what I mean? Like, it's going to make every game a shootout rather than a really dominant performance unless you're just bullying them, like we've seen against, unfortunately I'm going to say it, like, the game against Richmond.
No,
I think they
say
had
it.
up West Coast as well. Always one of the bomb ones. North Melbourne, that's it. So yeah,
that makes sense.
So pretty much. Again, I've said a lot about the Bulldogs. Sydney, they're great. As I said, like, is a bit concerning this one, but considering how much is still going right for them, and especially their forward line, because they do get a lot of midfield entries, scoring generation, but their forward line, just does enough every week. It's not the same players. I think Amadi was very good this one. And McLean obviously is very still building, but does very well contestedly. But yeah, as I said, it's pretty amazing how good their overall midfield is. And when both your lines are doing as well as they are, as I said, it's very hard to see an avenue of beating them at the moment. And while the Bulldogs really did come close, you still felt like Sydney possibly had a bit more to give this game. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's just like not in a bad way. In like they could be even better at this, and this is pretty impressive.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's kind of what Sydney just look like this year. It's that they could easily put majority of the teams away pretty convincingly, or they can make it interesting for themselves by letting teams have a bit of a run.
Unless they made it too interesting, like in Richmond.
Oh yeah, no. Well, I feel like that was kind of a once-off for them.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, like, even for their worst game, like, that was still close. Like, it's ridiculous how good they've been over these 12 rounds. Like, you've really got to be comparing them to some of the better starts in football. Like, considering their run of opponents, too. Like, this is...
Yeah, they've defeated...
Like, early 2000s...
They've defeated weak teams. They've defeated strong teams. They're pretty much a really strong all-round team at the moment.
Yeah, like, I would put it in, like, categorically, like, almost like Sydney, late St Kilda, late Geelong in the late 2000s, early 2010s. Like, it's just been really dominant. And, this might, what happens in the postseason, if teams adjust, whatever. But I reckon this is one of the best starting performances from a team in a few decades.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I think that's pretty accurate. Like I'm
Yeah.
sure like, the strong teams of the 2010s, like your Geelongs and your Hawthorns and your
Yeah.
and
Well,
your
Hawthorns would like, yeah,
even
Hawthorns
Sydney
would
back
drop games
then.
randomly. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like how like a lot of those times you had like strong like Adelaide's had a few like performances but then dropped off later in the year and all that. But
Freo was strong
um
back then as well.
yeah, exactly. So, so it's not like there's not much it's not like there's not much competition for that, but I honestly think this is one of the better. And I'll stake a coast to coast claim on it. Um, if they turn a crap after this, Sydney fans can DM me.
They can
I'll put the buzzer on them. Yeah.
just have you.
I mean, we've been pretty bad with crowning our champions because we've been late on the Sydney thing. Like we gave it to Geelong and GWS first, a bit prematurely.
Yeah, no, that's very
But yeah,
true. Although I still
I
think
think we're
GWS
maturing.
could have a strong fight, but
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, especially with the rival. If it was
almost halfway through the
head to head,
season.
yeah, exactly. Like if it was GWS and Sydney head to head, like you couldn't tip that as much because they've got a bit of history. Um, so yeah, as I said, that adds a bit more in the mix, but purely on paper, got to give it to Sydney.
All right, shall we move on to the third draw of the season?
Yes, yes, and Collingwood's second draw. This was obviously at Optus Oval, Fremantle Football Club, or in Sir Doug Nicholls Round, Wallyyallup,
Yep.
versus Collingwood. Both teams in the contest would have felt they got a bit of their own way in terms of actually getting the victory,
Mm-hmm.
and yet Wallyyups remain undefeated this year under that moniker, while Collingwood get their second draw for the year, as I said, with the margin being tied at 75 apiece, 18-9 to 10-15. Basically, a lot of this was about momentum. So the Dockers scored 3 early goals. Their their transition from back to forward with Pearce and Clark rebuffing the ball was very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, then Collingwood found avenues to goals, and it would be mainly stoppages that got him there. There was like a massive scoring lull in the second, so this wasn't a fast-paced game. There was a lot of ebbs and flows. Um, and yeah, so basically Freo were playing their slow marking games again, but they were failing to get good entries and would be combated by a very good Pies defense. And when the ball went the other way, the Pies would kick behind. Um, I think in the second quarter, I think it was 3 goals to a scoreless quarter for Collingwood, despite the what do you call it? Not possession game. Oh yeah, I guess the possessions being around even and all that sort of thing.
Was it more of a stoppage
Um,
game this week?
well, not really. It was only just like if you looked at the time of possession, or not time of possession, but like possession in forward half,
Mm-hmm.
like it looked like Collingwood had dominance, but it was really just Freo chipping it in their back line. You know what I mean? The ball stayed down there, but it was uncontested possessions by Freo. And yeah, as I said, after halftime, the flip was script. The flip was script.
The
The
script
script
was
was
flipped.
flipped.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a bit of a defensive collapse from Wallyyup, and great forward half pressure by the Pies. They scored 4 goals to zip in the third, set them up with a 25-point lead 19 minutes into the last quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Bowie Hill got that goal. And then Collingwood would never score again. Freo would start to move the ball quickly by hand with some very brave but effective chains up the middle of the ground. They would score 4 unanswered goals, with Sharp missing the final goal, capping off his good but slightly wasteful game. Collingwood would have 7 misses to add to their 15 points for the game, as well as benefiting from the rub and the umpires. So Freo will feel that they got bailed out by this one because there wasn't actually that much going towards them. Like they had some good players, but there were very limited moments
Yeah,
for
I did
them.
hear about the couple of controversies in this week's game.
Yeah, so, and, on the flip side, I was about to say Collingwood got their own bit of bad luck when I personally think it was fair decision, but considering it was on a youngster, you can't really be too hard on him. I think it was what's his name? Not Harvey Harrison. The other one,
Was it?
Richards Harrison.
We're talking about Collingwood
Number
player, right?
33. For Collingwood. Sorry, I need to get up.
Yeah, I can't. I have no idea at the moment.
Yeah.
Either.
Well, anyway, he handed the ball back to his player instead of the umpire. Sullivan, that's it. Sullivan.
That's right, Lucky Sullivan.
It sort of summed, yeah, Lucky Sullivan. It summed up his night. He missed a couple of easy ones. He did that, but overall, his effort was fantastic. But that just sort of summed it up from Collingwood. Like they were really good with what they had. It was just all conversion. So yeah, I said I think Wally are pretty lucky to get out of that with a draw. And again, absolutely benefited from their backline, which was pretty good. Except, of course, when I said that period of defensive collapse, it was also a lot to do with defensive stoppages. You might have heard a bit about Fife and, some things against him,
Yeah.
Not having pressure on his man and all that. But I think it was all about because, there were some contests in Collingwood's forward half where Josh Dacos near 50 meters was left unopposed, to kick goals. And, there would be always a player at the back of the contest, either to directly score or dish out. And they never really, it was very late. They needed a bit of leadership to, whether it's from Brayshaw or, Fifey himself to say, hey, we're leaking score from the back. Make sure you man up.
Yeah.
Even if you're not, we're not, even if we don't win some of the contests ourselves, we've got to stop this scoring, which just didn't happen, especially in the third quarter onwards, but it was pretty much the entire night. And yeah, as I said, yeah. So in terms of players, for Freo, there was, it was a very good day to be a halfback with, the amount of misses that Collingwood had. Clark, Ryan, Chapman, they all racked up a few possessions. Clark was absolutely fantastic. 35 possessions, 80% efficiency, 10 intercepts, 8 marks, 4 tackles. Pierce also got 8 intercepts and 5 intercept marks.
Very
he kicked
good.
that clutch goal late. That kept them in it. There was some real momentum after that. That was a rare captain's goal from him, but you know what I mean? You love to see it. And yeah, as I said, the pressure in the Fremantle forward line was so pale though in comparison to Collingwood's forwards. Schultz, even though he didn't have a big game, he got 5 tackles inside 50. McCreary and Harvey Harrison got 3 each. Yeah, and as I said, the young duo of Harvey Harrison and who is it? Someone Richards. I was gonna say Ed.
It's not Ed Richards.
Joe Richards. Yeah. They were fantastic. Harrison kicked 3, 6 score involvements and 9 tackles.
That's very good.
Richards just kicked the 1, but he got 22 possessions, 7 score involvements, and he was pretty good distributing for a young kid. And Myercheck also got 3 bucks inside 50, kicked 2 goals too, before getting injured. And on the flip side, as I said, it was all weird periods because Swiskowski, he didn't have a big game. But in the second quarter, there were 3 goals all in a row assisted by him in some way. Honestly, the only real forward threat, though, was Bailey Banfield. He kicked 3, 2 marks inside 50, 7 score involvements. And yeah, as I said, Fremantle just relied on a smattering of wider set shots and a few goals from the midfield. Darcy Moore shut down Amos. And our boy, Billy Frampton, he was pretty good on the forward rotating ruck.
Excellent.
Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson, they were okay in the tap work. Darcy Cameron was absolutely fantastic against them though. But yeah, they couldn't really generate much up forward. And yeah, Josh Tracy was he was the distributor. He got the hands on it a bit more. And yeah, as I said, while Sharp, I mentioned him before, he was fantastic moving the ball on the wing and he was very fast. Unfortunately for Freo, a lot of their fast players that took the game on were a bit wasteful. Like Sarong had a good few movements, but was a bit wasteful. And Matthew Johnson, the young kid, made a lot of errors early, but I thought he did good holding his head up and becoming a bit more damaging as the game went on. And for Collingwood, summing it up for them, Nick Dacos, 35 touches, 19 contested, 10 clearances, 7 tackles and 8 score involvements. Fantastic game. Darcy Cameron, 21 touches, 12 contested, 35 hit-outs, 7 clearances, 6 intercepts, 3 intercept marks. And what I mentioned with what he did against Jackson and Darcy, I would actually give him player of the match. I think he's gone very under the radar this year. But in terms of his own tap work and what he's able to do around the ground, he's been one of the best for Collingwood. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier,
I do really like watching him. To be fair, like he's definitely come into his own as a prominent ruckman in the game.
And it's so weird because he's very grunt, but he's also, he's not wasteful either, because there's a lot of ruckmen that, can generate a lot of clearances on their own, but, it always ends up in turnovers and all that sort of jazz. But Cameron's one of the ones that I think is a bit more classier.
He's a bit more nuanced when it comes to his ball usage.
Yeah, exactly. And, as much as classy can't be described much to do with Collingwood outside of football, there's been a lot of classiness on the field. So, props to him. And yeah, as I said, movement for Collingwood off halfback was really their main issues. Especially with how many more scoring shots Fremantle were able to generate in terms of turnovers. So, Freo turned the ball over more. They weren't able to generate as much intercepts, but they scored roughly even. So, the movement wasn't quite on for Collingwood. On the same time for Freo, they could get the ball a bit further down, but they were just so lacking in movement and intensity. As a lot of that high turnovers, shallow kicks inside 50 getting intercepted, the long kick's not doing much. And I don't know whether this is just a set plan for Freo or Walliop, because we have seen this at times. But when they get tired, like teams get tired, that's when they choose to do their bombing rush, handball chains, and it's really interesting. Is that just their plan? Is that why Freo start off a bit slow and tend to come into the games late? Because they're like, well, we'll work through it, we'll maintain possession, make teams run, and then when we know we have the speed, we'll go? Or, is it just because they're getting behind and need to do that? So
it could be a bit of both, to be honest.
I mean, yeah, exactly. You can never do exactly what you want to do, and it is good to have that in that back pocket, but especially with a team that's not so accurate as Fremantle, it definitely puts them on the back foot at times. And, as I said, maybe it's not so much, they need to go all out attacking. I just think the variety early on is something that Walliop could probably tinker with a bit. And, as I said, they can apply more offensive pressure evenly against teams rather than, be so, patchy as we saw in this game.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. I mean, there's not much difference really between these two teams. A lot of it's just consistency and just current form.
Because it's weird, Freo are technically a forward pressure team like Collingwood, but it's I feel like Collingwood, they're more
well-rounded in areas.
Yeah, they're more well-rounded. They can be a bit more direct, and they find it easier to generate scoring shots. It's just that they're less efficient, whereas Freo are a step further back from that, and they really require people coming up, like Tracy, for instance. A lot was said about Jai Amos' quiet game, and I think he's just been playing that role all year. He doesn't get that many touches, but when he
doesn't need that many touches, as long as when he gets those touches, he's effective.
As I said, the last 2 weeks he's been missing, but I don't think you can really knock him. I think more up forward, and as I said, when your most damaging distributor is one of your tall forwards in Josh Tracy, it makes it really hard, because then you are forcing you're making Jai Amos do more 2-on-1 contests. You're making Moore's job easier. And, as I said, they just got to, you know, because, as I said, uh, they've tried out, what's his name? Michael Voss. No,
Yes.
Michael Voss.
No.
Patrick Voss,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
and
Patrick
as I said,
Voss.
and he did miss a few, but I actually probably gone away from it. Just because the amount he was presenting, I think added a bit more to their forward line depth. And I really hope he comes back soon because, if he can just get that confidence, maybe you go the waffle, hopefully get a bit more accuracy from easier looks. I didn't actually see his waffle performance. Sorry, I could have checked that if I thought about it, but
It's
yeah,
fine.
like yeah, as I said, they just need that extra option. They don't have many forward options. And as I said, they're just playing with a few, I don't want to call him dead weight, but Michael Walters, Tom Emmett, you know,
You'd
in
expect
terms
more
of in
from
the forward
Walters,
line.
especially.
Oh, Walter, yeah, like Tommy Emmett, he's a building, but you know what I mean? Like, he's played almost every game this season, and he's probably not had the form to deserve that. And, sometimes that happens. You always got to, like, stay positive on the kids when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But, as I said, I think Freo would just benefit. As I said, I don't think their list is quite there yet. It's what I sort of said at the start of the year, where they might be a bit thin on certain lines. And yeah, as I said, I think in the forward line, like that's really starting to catch up with them. But if they can at least set up this, like they'll be pretty solid in a couple of drafts time. Maybe they can get a lucky player trade. It's always a bit harder in the West. You can't rely on it, but um, whether that's someone like Chad Warner, maybe check $1 million at him. Sydney won't want to let him go, but
No,
you got
Sydney
to think
definitely won't
about.
want to let him go.
But you got to think about that as a club, because their own midfield, they don't score that much consistently. Brayshaw obviously had a few opportunities. Hayden Young's kicked, just under a goal a game. But yeah, as I said, they need that explosive rotating. They need that explosive player that can rotate forward and midfield. That's what I think Freo need the most of currently.
Yeah, no, that sounds about right. I did actually have a look at some extra notes that came from this game, and the one that was
Yes.
more notable was the fact that Mason Cox kind of had a bad bit of run with injury during this.
Oh, yeah.
Suffered a leg issue
So,
and concussion.
yeah, it was a bit of a double whammy, and it was interesting because I'm not really sure 100%. Like the leg issue, because I haven't seen it. I think he actually went off more because of his eye and the concussion more than the leg. So it'll be interesting to see if he's out for an extended period of time.
Well,
I
he's
haven't quite seen.
apparently it was a concussion, so he's missing 2 weeks anyway.
Yeah. But, the interesting thing, because at that time he wasn't playing with his goggles because they snapped. And they were checking when he came off around his eye. So I was actually a bit worried, that might have actually had an impact. Fingers
Put
crossed
a
that doesn't happen, and it's just it's just a much more nicer option of concussion and a leg injury.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I wish him all the best. But as I said, he did put in a solid performance as a backup rock. Still struggles up forward, but I think that's just sort of the role for him. I'll go with Billy. I think went forward a bit late and sort of covered that.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, he's not quite a forward,
No, he's
even though he was
more of a
recruited
backman,
as
but
one.
you know.
He's definitely found his niche down back. And yeah,
All right, shall
that's about all I had for that. Yeah,
yeah, that wasn't. I feel like kind of gone on long enough on that one. Do you
yeah.
want to move on to your game then, since it's going to be
I'm
a bit of
actually
a
gonna
small
skip that for
rundown?
now. I might summarize that a bit more as we go a bit later.
All right,
Um,
do we want to talk about Carlton Gold Coast Land?
yeah, we'll do a brief on this one because it was weird. Like, I mean, 30 points isn't that close. You know what
No,
I mean?
like you kind of expected the game to be somewhat well contested, considering the Suns have been fairly decent so far this year.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I think in parts the Suns will be like. I think this just sort of shows where they're at. Because Carlton started off the game really well. They dominated possessions and clearances. And, like, I don't know if you remember, but the segment I did last week saying that their forward line was a bit one-dimensional.
No, I remember you saying that.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah. I think Michael Vossi might have been having a bit of a lesson. Like it did. I mean, honestly, like he did go forward last week, but Zach Williams took to his new forward role quite well. I know it's a bit weird for you, but he's now a forward, Blazy. Get with the
I mean, it's
times.
not a bad thing. Like being able to have
No,
players
no,
that
no.
are flexible is great for them.
Yeah, like because he has played, that before, but as I mentioned, like they have a problem with the movement on halfback as well.
Hmm.
But I think this is actually a very good proactive move by the Blues, because they'll get players back from the halfback line. So moving him forward, I think on the long term might be a bit better. But yeah, as I said, the Blues would dominate the second quarter. The Suns midfield unit looked pretty down
Mm-hmm.
up at halftime. No Sun would have more than 3 clearances for that half, while Patrick Cripps 10 clearances for the game at that point. So
Jeez.
it was
That
a smashing.
that's a captain's
We've seen
performance for a
Carlton,
half at least.
yeah, like Carlton's demolished certain teams in the midfield. And this one, yeah, they were a bit too strong. There was a lot of tackling pressure from Alex Davies and Matt Rowell. And the Suns did out tackle them, but they just couldn't get their hands on the ball themselves. So it wasn't, like tackling because you were trying to mitigate or anything. It was tackling because the only thing left to do was tackle.
That was their
So
only
yeah.
option.
Yeah, in the third goal, the Suns caught up a bit, but Carlton were a bit wasteful in the forward line. But they got a bit of territory back. Um, but yeah, in the fourth quarter, Carlton had some good kicking. They held their lead, and it was pretty much a two-man show with Curnow and Williams. They sunk the Suns as they continue to be a good scoring team, but a lot of struggles in defensive areas. And they would lose 15-12, 102 to 11-7, 73.
Mm-hmm.
They, it was all right by the Suns, but, as I said, they did, accuracy kept them in it as well. I've already mentioned, Chris, 31 disposals, 16 contested, 84 defensive efficiency.
Disposal
Disposal
efficiency.
efficiency. Yeah. 13 clearances, so I only got 3 after halftime, but it was still massive.
Okay, so they must have put a hard
8
tag on him in that case, but there wasn't much more you could do against
Yeah,
him.
by memory, I think it was not what's his name? Like
Oh, McAndrew?
probably Steve. No, not Mike Andrew.
Flanders.
A Ballard, I think.
Oh yeah, might
not
have been
Ballard.
Ballard.
I think no. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah, like honestly, the person that got tagged the most was Noah Anderson. He got absolutely shut down. I think he had the Kennedy tag on.
Oh yeah.
And Kennedy. Oh no, Hewitt. Sorry.
I mean, both are pretty
So
good
yeah,
taggers. They both do a really good
yeah,
tagging role.
like Kennedy's more the run with, like generate both way, where Hewitt can, shut down with a lot more direct pressure. So yeah. 11 score involvements in a goal for Cripps, as if like the other possessions weren't enough.
Hmm.
Zach Williams, as I said, 4 goals, 9 score involvements. Kerno 4-4, 12 score involvements. And their backline was very good too. Brody Kemp, 19 disposals, 95% efficiency,
Mhm.
10 marks, and absolutely shut down Jed Walters. The youngster had a very quiet game. Mitch McGovern continues to be a great intercept mark. Kept Locatius very quiet. Sander Koning, he had 10 clearances, 27 hitouts, 8 score involvements as the ruck. Witts was probably the best player for the Suns. 46 hitouts, 14 possessions, 7 clearances, 8 score involvements, and a goal.
That's very
Duke
good
Miller
for
was
the veteran.
Yeah, Duke Miller was the one that sort of kept it. The Suns in it. 8 clearances, 5 score involvements, 5 tackles.
Yep.
And yeah, the forward line, they had a bit. Ben Long was the pressure one. 2-2, 4 tackles inside 50s, 8 score involvements. And then King, 3-2, 4 marks inside 50, despite having Wettering on him. And of course, Mac Andrews, probably the best in defense with not many other players to talk about. 6 set marks and 17 possessions. Yeah, as I said, he continues to be a very good intercept defender.
Yeah, I've been very,
Obviously,
very impressed with his season so far.
yeah, honestly, like this was a very good round to be Sudanese and being playing in the back line. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely. Just in
so
general, like you got Mac Andrews, you got Lika Lear, Mabior Chol
yeah,
has had
yeah,
a really good game this week.
yeah. Obviously Aaliyah.
Lear
We didn't
Lear.
obviously because we're gonna go back on that, but he was pretty solid. So yeah, so it was pretty, you know, it's good to see. Like as I said, that it's not just the athleticism. It's like as the programs are being better. Like these are all very smart football players in terms of positioning and all that. You know, like so it's one of those things though. The earlier you get exposed to the game, like a lot of these players aren't so much relying on raw talents. As the game expands, you know,
Hmm.
players from other codes can come in and more directly have an impact. So yeah, so as I said, brilliant game for Carlton. Um, Gold Coast Suns, they're about where we expect them to be honest. Like they still haven't won away from home, which is concerning. We're going to be talking about another team that's a bit concerning away from home later, but as I said, it's just they need that. You know, as I said, they just need to figure out when the game's not in their own terms to, um, you know, uh, cut it back a bit defensively because they do struggle with that. They can have huge run of goals scored against them, but again, in the context of the rebuild, still solid. It's just the one thing that prevents me from thinking that they're going to be, actually in the finals.
Yeah,
Um,
if they're struggling
yeah,
to
and
win
they
away from
need
home, they fair chance
struggling
they're
to win
probably not
away
going
from
to make it.
home. They're not really had that big win. Like, I mean, it's pretty much the same as Fremantle. Like, Fremantle, their only big win was that draw against Collingwood, which
Hmm.
wasn't a win. Like, no wins, I think, against the top 10 sides for them. And I think the Suns have one win against the top 10 sides. So, out of about five. So, a bit unproven, but, they've got an easier schedule. Hopefully, they'll be in and around by the end of the year and they can get some momentum for next year where I think, you know, when you get seasons of worth of backline pressure and, you know, working your defensive midfield systems, they might be a bit more potent against some of these top teams.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Like looking at from what I remember of the rest, what the rest of their run looks like, it's
Yeah.
definitely a mix between hard teams and easy teams. So they could have a decent run to try and push finals, but it's going to be really hard for them.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect if they get there, they're going to be much of a threat. Like,
It'll
I
be
think there
like,
might be a few Essendon fans where if they finish fifth and the Suns finish eighth, they'll be like, we might break a curse here.
yeah, they might get pretty lucky on that one in that case. But I mean,
Oh, look, this is Essendon would rather stay in the top four, I
oh no,
think, just because of
absolutely.
the supporters.
If you're a
But
team in the top
you know
four,
what I
you want to
mean?
stay top four.
Like, there's a lot of good teams pushing for eighth. I think there might, if the Suns made the eight, I wouldn't exactly call them like a top eight team,
No,
so to speak.
it'd be like
Like,
St Kilda of last year, where they made it, but
yeah,
they're not much of a
exactly.
threat.
But at least prettier to watch.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Uh,
All right, do you want to touch on your game, or do you want to go Geelong GWS
yeah,
next?
we'll touch on my game because that's a bit of a shorter one before finishing off on a pretty big one before we get into the shorter summaries. So yeah, uh, this was at Launceston.
Uh,
Oh my lord.
it was
Yeah,
in
Launceston
Tasmania.
I
I
know
know
about.
that much.
Yeah, it is in Tasmania. North actually started the game okay. Port were turning the ball over and making it a bit easier for them. As North were getting some very easy looks. Um, as yeah, they sort of struggled to take the ball down the middle as well. Port Adelaide, they were losing a lot of the contest.
Hmm.
But yeah, and it was very frustrating when watching it because um no, sorry, no, I'm thinking of last week. Sorry. I was about to say they were sucking it early because of the wet conditions. That was a Hawthorn game.
Yeah, no, pretty sure it didn't
Sorry
rain
about
this
that.
weekend. I saw.
No, 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 no. Anyway, so it was actually good by Port. So they were struggling a bit taking the ball down the middle, and they sort of switched to a wider attack. They moved some tolls up the ground, mainly Todd Marshall, occasionally Georgiadis,
Hmm.
and they found players all on their own, exposed North defense. It was pretty much over after they made that adjustment. Like, and this is again going to touch back to the concerning thing on North. If the Bulldogs have trouble, defending end to end, then North are like, in the chasms, quite currently. And yeah, also Butters started to actually lift a bit more on the inside, so that started even a bit more. The second quarter would tighten up, and I think actually there was periods of time where North conventionally, like their back six, were defending well. But you know what I mean? Like North would, when they were defending well, North would get a few entries the other way, but Aaliyah and Asava Radagalia, they were fantastic, way too tight for them to get past. And although the North had solid movement from their backline with Tucker and Fisher being very good, it wasn't really amounting to much scoring generation. As I said, again, even attacking on the wing was very bad for them, has been all season.
Yep.
They kept on turning the ball over. Horn Francis, who was relishing the blue booze, he had 8 clearances a goal and 13 possessions by the half. And then, as I said, they were a bit more defensive in the second. It all just collapsed in the third. Yadaputi would kick 6 goals 5. 2 being kicked by Darcy Byrne-Jones. He continues to be solid as a forward. And yeah, North players just gave up on the contest. They were really down. It would be very disappointed as a coach to see that, when you had bits in the game and then it just blitzed open like that. And yeah, as I said, Yadaputi would put the cue in the rack in the last. North tried to make it a bit more acceptable, but Radaglia just wasn't having any of it. They couldn't move the ball past him. He was unlucky. He ended Lucky's goal scoring run. Probably the one positive, consecutive game record that North had
North
going
actually
for them
had. Yeah,
this
that's
entire season.
That's unlucky for them.
I mean, I love it for Asava Radagalia, and I think he's actually had a very underrated season.
Honestly, I agree, because he was severely underrated going into this season anyway.
Yeah.
Like, people weren't expecting
underrated,
people weren't expecting much from him in comparison to, I guess, where he's come from and the seasons that he's already had.
And it's like, it was a lot about ball use, especially. He's not that best a decision maker. And I think it's the combination where I think with the backline that they've got set up, he's been a bit more confident, which saw his ball use gone a tiny bit up. But, as I said, it's if he just does his defensive work, he still makes a few mistakes a match. But when you compare that to the spoils he gets and the easy looks that he prevents, I think Asava, by far, there's way more goals than is prevented than, let few with a few errors.
Yeah,
and especially when he's complimenting Aaliyah. And there's been times where he's had the better game of the two. Not just in defensive matchups, but intercepts.
Maybe that's what he needed that he wasn't getting from Geelong, which is a game plan that actually suits his game style.
Yeah, exactly. So, as I said, so this was probably one of his best. As I said, even though you can say, oh, it's North, it's Larky. Larky was trying his heart out.
Larky is one of the best tall forwards in the competition right now. And if he can't get a score, that means you're doing a good job.
Exactly. It was a down game, don't get me wrong. But, as I said, I would just, if he had more around him, he might have found his way to a few more opportunities, but it just wasn't happening for him.
Yeah, exactly.
He got 6 disposals for the night. It was pretty quiet. Yeah. But, as I said, it's when you look at it for Port, Todd Marshall, he scored 5 goals, but a lot of those were wide and from the 50-meter arc. So I'm going to give North Melbourne this. They defended deep very well. They pushed them out. So they conceded a lot of set shots with 20. Toddy getting about 5, Georgie getting 3. And, no one from North got more than 1 set shot. It was pretty dismal on offense. But you know what? Charlie Comben, he started in defense. He put a lot of effort in. He's been playing a really good game. Core held Finlayson well in his milestone game. Finlayson continues just to be there for Port Adelaide. And in terms of the other
it was his
North
what,
Melbourne
200th?
Finlayson, 150th, I think.
I know it's something high. I just couldn't remember how high.
I think 150. Anyway,
Anyway,
so
doesn't matter.
in terms of yeah, as I said, North Melbourne players that did well. Yeah, I said cool. Cherry, LDU, Wardlaw, and Sheasel, pretty strong in the midfield. Like they got beaten there, but as I said, it was like the inside movement generation was still there. They still scored a few from the clearances. And they'll match up by, another team that was having a fantastic game. Butters, Winehorn, Francis, all fantastic. And young Mead continued his fantastic form in the middle as well. So it was a tough matchup. Both teams got possessions. It's just, North had no other way of generating attack. And, when it was in transition, they turned the ball over. They gave Port a lot of ample and quick entries. And as I said, that's why I said the back six was so impressive, because none of those went deep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, honestly, despite still conceding 100 points, like, I'm going to get their defensive pass and I'm going to, like, shift it, like, to their midfield unit, really. And, I know that's harsh when I said the insides did okay, but, when the outsides aren't, you just got to find a way in transition. And there's just nothing there for the Roos at the moment. Yeah, as I said, Tucker and Fisher were like the only movement options, and they were both solid. You know what I mean? Like, neither were absolutely fantastic. But again, I say that's a bit more to the pressure up the field. And yeah, so the Roos are just got to find something. Because as I said, like, even when they were looking good, and I was saying it each week, it was like Dylan Stevens not doing that much. Bailey Scott on the wing, just being air. Like now they've sort of moved Curtis Taylor to be a bit more on that wing spot, and that's taken a bit away from their attack, you know what I mean? So, yeah, as I said, it's not great. Yeah, that's all I really want to say about North Melbourne. Like, some effort was there. It wasn't as bad as some of the other losses, but it was still concerning overall. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing that we always ask every week out of North. It's just show some effort, try and be consistent at least, even if you're going to lose to almost every team in the competition.
They still got to keep a team under 100. They got to fix that. Like, they can't just keep on going with that, because then it just starts to look really dismal. Like, when you're a player and, like, it's not just you're the worst team in the competition, you might be a part of a worst metric of all time. Like, that's got to feel really dire. You know what I mean? And
yeah, and even if you look at
do...
even if you look at what, like, a team like Richmond, for an example, looks like at the moment statistically, I still think that now that we've started to get some players back and we've made some changes that kind of make us look a lot better defensively, I even think that they might not even be able to keep us under 100.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is not a good look when we're second last on the ladder.
Exactly. And, as I said, going back to Hawthorn and what they're able to do, we'll go on about them later, but it started with, a game plan starting to formate. They start with easy wins, and all of a sudden, even away from home, they've been good. So, as I said, a lot of these things start with the small wins. They got to prevent things looking dire. But yeah, I will say one positive. Although he was on Marshall, who kicked 5 goals, I think Will Dawson actually did good to push him up. I think he was just second game player for the Roos, I should add.
That's
but yeah,
good for a young guy.
It was really just, the amount of entries. And I don't think he was as, like, I think he stayed a bit deeper as well. You know what I mean? Like, Marshall sort of pushed up a bit afterwards. So, yeah, as I said, yeah, just a minor positive for them as well to finish it up.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. All right, Geelong and GWS. We should probably touch on that now because it's one of the bigger games of the round.
Yeah, one of the big games. Took a few notes on it, just a cheeky few.
This game happened. This was the Saturday game, right?
Yes, this was Saturday afternoon,
Yeah,
solo time slot.
this game
Um,
happened whilst I was literally in the air, so I could not watch a
yeah,
thing of this game. And it's probably out of besides the Dreamtime game, this is probably the game that I wanted to watch the most because of
yeah, and it was really interesting, but also, you know, I think, yeah, like it was very interesting to see how GWS had sort of responded from being in a lull. Geelong also, 4 on the trot. So it was a team where both teams needed to win,
Mhm.
stay in at least the top 4, if not prevent it getting worse of falling out the 8, which Geelong are at risk of if they keep this streak up. Yeah, they're currently 6-6. And yeah, so GWS have continued to find Goomba to be a home away from home. They registered their 4th straight win against the Cats there.
which is very
Despite
impressive because it's really hard to beat
yeah,
Geelong in Geelong.
oh yeah, like it's it's got to be the longest. I think. I don't think there's any
Uh,
longer than 4.
Off the top of my head, yeah, because I don't think there's been any
I
team this year that's beaten them there.
Yeah,
Because
because I
I
think
think out of their past
3.
4 losses, I think they've all been out, apart from
Mm,
today. Oh, sorry, today. Apart from
yeah,
the GWS, I think every other loss that they've had has been outside of Geelong.
yeah. But as I said, if you looked at the game, like Geelong really had dominant time in their forward half, but they would have to rely on like brilliant kicking to keep them in the game. Like both defenses made sure that there wasn't that many shots on goal that were close. But Geelong sort of just overpossessed the ball. They're very cautious with their entries. And, at the start, it looked pretty good for the Cats. They kicked 5 straight, but they're all from deep. The Giants scored 2-4. They were getting like a lot of nice looks, but failing to either convert in their own movement or just in front of the sticks. Like it was pretty much stummed up early where like Jesse Hogan got manhandled in the goal square. Should have got a mark. It fell forward to O'Halloran about 15 meters out on a slight angle. He got a push in the back,
Mm-hmm.
got a set shot, and missed it. So that was pretty much the sum. Like they were doing 90% of the game right. They were just failing to convert. Um, but yeah, as the game going on, the Giants would start to generate a lot from stoppages. In the second quarter, they kicked 6-1
Mm-hmm.
from the stoppage work. But unfortunately, it was a bit soured because Stephen Cornelio was subbed off despite a fantastic effort playing with one arm for about 5 to 10 minutes after a shoulder dislocation. One of the 2 very brave acts for this game. We'll talk about the other one later. But, he was looking very dangerous, as I said,
I have a
until he got subbed
I
off.
have a correction to make. There's been one other team to beat them in Geelong so far this season. Port Adelaide.
No, I'm talking about 4 times in a row.
Oh yeah, I know, but I mean,
Port won.
there's been at
Port
least
won.
they've lost at least one more time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Port beat
There.
them.
I
I
don't,
didn't remember
I'm pretty
that.
sure 4 times in
Don't
a
try
row
and
is
put.
the record
Yeah,
though.
I think that's the most. Yeah, because this was like built in what 2004. Is
Something like
2000
that.
sometime.
Yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
while.
Anyway, so yeah, the Cats really generating much in their scored half. Meanwhile, on the flip side, Cadman, Hogan, and Riccardi provide a lot of headaches. Riccardi had 3 goals at the half and loomed ominous for Geelong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, sort of again, like a lot of games with changing momentum. Cats got it into it through some very good well, not good ball use from them. It was by bad ball use by GWS. Like
Mm-hmm.
whenever they try to go the forward, they turned it over. The Cats were starting to get some threatening movements off those turnovers. So like despite the excellent ability to win the ball from the GWS mids, they smashed the clearances. Players like Tom Green, Finn Callanan, and Kieran Briggs were a bit sloppy despite their really good performances. And then, I think the Cats entered the quarter with a bit of a lead in the last,
Mm-hmm.
and the game would just be a defensive halt from there. It was, despite like the lack of scoring, it was probably some of the most exciting bit of footy for it. Honestly, the Cats pumped the ball inside 50. I couldn't find the exact quarter thing, but I think it was like 15-4 in terms of inside 50s in the last quarter. Um, and yeah, as I said, the Cats were pumping in there, but who would they find? And mate, we've said before, Lekalia, absolutely fantastic in that last quarter and the entire night.
What a
Wasn't just him
thrilling,
though.
what a thrilling
Yeah,
season he's had so far.
yeah. So his mate Connor Idun and Nick Haynes were also very good. It was a pretty comprehensive performance. It was just capped off
Hmm.
by that Lekalia. And yeah, as I said, it's been a great season. And, he complements, that defense so well. It's a lot of pressure off Sam Taylor. Like, I thought he had a good game, but, like, he's clearly coming back a bit still. He's not quite the
Still not
shutdown he
quite
has
all
been for the
there.
last, few weeks. I mean, it's still impressive, but you know what I mean. So,
Yeah, he's still
yeah.
one. He's still one of the best halfback defenders in the competition.
So yeah, but basically, so in that stoppage, in that like real arm wrestle, the Cats would kick 2 goals from Stengel and hit the lead midway,
Hmm.
and they looked like they would have all the momentum. As I said, they were creating the inside 50s, and I had them home from there. Toby Green, I'm not sure if you saw this, kicked one of the most impressive long snaps you'll see, 40 meters, couple of steps, beautiful curve and massive distance, never looked like missing. They still needed to defend for 10 more minutes. I think there was a few behind scored from them, but
Hmm.
they held on strong. They won the contest 11-8, 74 to Geelong, 11-12, 78 to GWS. And,
Yeah, good
as I
on them.
said, brave win. And one thing I will like to mention about Geelong, they have been doing a lot of work these last few weeks rotating their midfield. Because they've had a few players come in and out, to be fair.
Yeah, that's
Obviously,
true. They
start with
have.
Dangerfield. Duncan comes back into the mix and they lose. I forgot who else they've lost, but yeah, as I said, there's a couple.
Uh,
Um,
yeah, I'm blanking on who they're
yeah.
missing.
So, so who they put in there? He was Geelong's best player for the match, probably. Max Holmes, inside midfielder, played a bit last week. This week he got very much a lot of time. I think it was like 70-odd% centre bounce attendance.
Hmm.
So he got 32 possessions, 5 clearance, 11 brown goal gets, and 9 intercepts. Tui, he's been floated forward a couple of times, but he was still mainly wing in this game. He contributed on a lot of fronts. He got 24 possessions, 500-meter gains, 6 clearances, which led Geelong. So there was a lot of stoppages on the outside wings, which just happened because of a lot of the turnovers. So yeah, he got to actually work inside that way. 6 inside 50s and a goal. Again, he was a long roost. In defense, Kolodajny kept Cadman quiet. Like, he was threatening early, but
Hmm.
as the game went on, Kolodajny sort of put the clamps on him. I think he only scored 1 goal. Kolodajny got 17 steps, 4 score involvements, so he was in a bit of the offense too. Scored a goal too. One of his rare forays from a 50-meter penalty. And Stewart
Okay.
had another forward try mark on him and limit his interception. I think that was Callanan. But he
Yeah,
would
it's too
still have
bad.
7 intercepts and 8 marks, but only 2 of those were intercept marks. So the focus the last 3 weeks has been shutting down Stewart. And while I say this game, it wouldn't have had the biggest impact. It's still an impact, and Geelong are going to have to work through their work off halfback.
Yeah,
Up
absolutely.
forward, yeah, up forward, the usual suspects were pretty quiet. Close and Stengel and Cameron combined for 4 goals, 21 score involvements. So they were more indirect than direct. But yeah, Hawkins did come back a bit, actually. He had 4 marks inside 50, converted 2 goals, 1, but they were from very limited possession. So he sort of gave Geelong just enough to be in the contest. Like, honestly, their forward line were functioning on a very thin wire. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, it was
when
almost ineffective,
it's like when you look at
but it
them
wasn't.
like early in the season, they were fit, they were firing, they were
Hmm.
effective all around the ground. Even when, like, I think Hawkins and or Cameron had kind of gone back at some cases, or at least played further up the
They
ground.
floated Cameron back a lot.
But
Yeah.
yeah, clearly something switched, and with Hawkins not having a goal for several weeks up until this
Yeah.
point, it hasn't been a great look for them.
Yeah, and as I said, like, they've still been able to get a lot of function out of the last couple of weeks. Obviously, nearly scoring, I think it's like 80 and, the 100 against Gold Coast. But, as I said, the thing that this week was there wasn't any deep entries for them. Like, they were denied a lot. As I said, like, I've been amazed at their ability to find that second link inside 50. GWS denied all of that. So yeah, as I said, they were fantastic. Yeah, just going through some of the major things, as I said, in terms of the clearance dominance, it was mainly Briggs out of the centre. He was fantastic, one of the better
Makes
ones
sense.
on
Key
ground.
ruckman.
44 hit, yeah, 44 hit outs, 8 clearances, and 7 tackles. So it was pressure as well. So Peatling and clearance, Callanan also got a lot of clearances. They got 6 apiece. Peatling also got 7 score involvements. He was very good in the middle. And yeah, so Green was like a bit more hard ball get person, 13 ground ball get, 17 contested. But, as I said, he was a bit sloppier than he would probably like, or his standard, you know what I mean? So, as a midfield unit, like GWS were okay, despite dominating the clearances. Struggling to generate a bit. Idan and Aaliyah, as I said, 13 and 11 intercepts respectively. Aaliyah had 6 intercept marks, as I said, really fantastic. And as I said, it was funny because Idan sort of complimented him. He had 11 ground ball gets. So Aaliyah was covering the air, and if it needed to come down, Idan was there. So it was just very tight knit. He kept Idan, I should say, kept Cameron quiet by his standards. Sam Taylor took the Hawkins job, and as I said, kept him quiet as he needed to. 3 intercept marks for himself, 7 intercepts. It was a coming back game. Good signs from there. And I said, Caniglio was, yeah, I know. I say Caniglio ironically, and now I've just gotten to saying it. Yeah, as I said, he didn't have the biggest stats game. Like, he had 27 disposals, but he got smacked hard in the jaw twice. He generated 2 one-match suspensions, big stats to Blitzars and I forgot the other one actually. Oh, sorry. But yeah, as I said, 2 players are missing next round because of that. And yeah, as I said, it was just a very brave game because he was, smacked pretty hard. Jai Clark, that's the other one. So they're both missing next week. But yeah, Haynes would have 20 disposals, 80% efficiency, 474 meters gain. But yeah, as I said, chains of halfback were pretty bad for the Giants. And Riccardi up forward was pretty huge, 4-1. And Green also provided a bit. Combined with Daniels, they had 17 score involvements, 3 goal assists, and Green obviously scoring 2-2 and the winner. So yeah, just in summary, I think Geelong actually do come a bit worse out of this game. Like, while the Giants were sloppy, it was still their game plan, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just a bit of execution that was missing for them. And it really looked like more sustainable, where the Cats were really reliant on some high level shot taking for them to stay into this contest. And as I mentioned before, for a team that's normally so efficient when the ball enters inside 50s, they struggled a lot to convert in the forward half, whether that's chains or even direct scoring. And it would be concerning the amount of periods that they've been shut down in terms of offense in the last 3 games. It's sort of defense has still been a concern for them as well.
Yeah.
But, as I said, it's been defensively whole games and offensively periods. But when you got Geelong that's so dominant with their offense, I think that's actually probably where they could get their ball back in. When your offense fires a bit more, you're not generating forward half turnovers. it's easier to defend because then you're only defending mainly off clearances.
Yeah.
And, if you have enough pressure, you can mitigate, some of that movement even further. Whereas I said, GWS's defense looked to be back on track. Some brilliant defending. And even in the last quarter where Geelong's entries were a lot better, a lot more threatening, they held up. So massive credit to them. Huge win. And,
Yeah, it's
put some
definitely
back
a
on
win
top.
that they needed.
Yeah. Like, and, just to be a bit more like casual, like between you and me, Blazy, that like Port and Essendon, like they're currently in the top 4.
Yeah.
They're probably not the most, you wouldn't be surprised if they went by there by the end of the year. I don't
Yeah.
want to call them frauds because I think they actually have done a lot of good things right this year. But, if GWS can come out of this lull, come back stronger,
There is a very
I think
possible
they
chance
can.
that one of those two teams could end up being knocked out.
Yeah, exactly. And we've seen that, Melbourne, in that time period, lost that game against West Coast, which brings them a game behind third. Currently, Port are a game locked into the top 4, Essendon a game and a half. Still a game and a half behind Sydney. But yeah,
Yeah,
as I
I
said,
don't think Sydney is going to lose top spot anytime soon.
oh, I would be amazed if they didn't have it by the end of the year with the evenness of the competition. Like, I could see them losing like 5 games for the year.
Although
But on the
Sydney, we are heading into the bye rounds, and Sydney do have a
yeah,
bye this week.
yeah, this week, so they're definitely not going to lose this round. You can call that a coast to coast lock.
Yeah,
Um,
well, that's kind of it's a statistical lock because they're a game and a half
yeah,
in front.
exactly. So yeah, as I said, it's just very important for the Giants because they're still doing a lot right. As I said at the start of the season, I thought Sydney would be like the lesser version of the Giants, and while both teams I thought both teams would be good, but I think that was fairly correct. It was just the opposite way around in the end.
Yeah,
Like, Sydney are a more complete version of the Giants. The Giants obviously
Sydney are the
great
threat that they
offensively.
should be, whereas the Giants are still they're threatening, but they're still
Yeah,
finding
exactly.
holes that they need to fill.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, it's a lot with Bowies and all that. As I said, they've got the structure there. They've got obviously a lot of veterans, solid midfield. But yeah, as I said, it's just been, you know, a few patches of bad moments and a few unlucky injuries.
Mm.
But yeah, I think they'll be back on track and like really, really solid, hopefully, for the next few weeks. If I'm right and they're, back to the form they were at the very start of the season.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, hopefully, well, they've got the bye this week, so it's not going to matter too much what happens. But hopefully, they'll be able to, freshen up and take on whoever they're playing the week after, which we will look at in a moment anyway, I assume.
Yeah, they faced Hawthorn.
Oh, well,
At
that could actually be a pretty good
Launceston.
game.
At Launceston too, so it'll be interesting. I think Hawthorn play next week. Yeah, they do.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, they play against Quana, or now Adelaide, since Doug Nicholls Round is over. But yeah, so that should be 2 interesting games for them.
Speaking of
But we
Hawthorn,
won't go too far.
do you want to quickly touch on
Yes,
the
yes,
only
I was about
the
to.
only
Thank you.
decent Sunday game?
Yeah, so I'll talk about this one a bit more. So, I didn't say it obviously in this because it wasn't around last year. Did mention it in a very preseason. Hawthorn were defined probably fairly by saying they mucked around with uncontested ball off the half-back line,
No,
turned the ball over.
I think that's fairly
It was
agreeable.
it was hard because it was pretty unwatchable as well.
Yeah, very true.
And, it just lacked a lot of identity. I've been asking for. They don't know me anything, obviously, but I've been asking to see identity from Hawthorn.
We just
They
want
didn't
a
quite have it.
consistency out of them. We just wanted something
Exactly. We
positive.
didn't quite see it in the first few weeks. But now we've got I think it's 5 weeks in a row of pretty solid football. from them, and we can really see where they're going with it. You know, it's still built off what they were doing last year, so I'm glad that Sam Mitchell hasn't, you know, tried to rewrite all of last year. You know what I mean?
Well, I
Like,
mean, they're
at least
slowly
we could see
climbing
some of
climbing
it
the
was
ladder. They've
building.
got 4 wins under their belt this
Hmm.
season.
Yeah. So, but you know, as I said, instead of, you know, just chipping it around from halfback, they've now got that balance where they're providing damaging attack from their controlled ball use. They're very good on the ground, so if they do lose the ball, they're not going to just straight up turn it over to the opponent.
Hmm.
And in this game, they quite professionally dismantled the Lions. 15-10, 100 to 10-15, 75. So obviously the Lions again sort of kicking themselves out the game. Um, and yeah, as I said, Hawthorn still turned the ball over. That's where the Lions got a lot of their attack from. And in the, you know, third quarter, the Lions really had a chance to strongly come back. Obviously, that's where some of the inaccuracy happened. I think it was like 6 or 7 behinds in the third quarter or something pretty
Yes, this was the
ridiculous.
one game that I actually got to like see bits of, and I think that's
Yeah.
correct.
And, you know, like, it would be in the back of the mind, you know, the game against Port last week, you know, is this going to happen again? But no, they were really strong. They still played a bit more defensively, but again, it was more that balance of still moving the ball forward when needed to.
Hmm.
In the last, you know, they still had territory in their forward half. So you know, it was it was a lot more calculated because obviously I think what they were trying to do last week was be calculated, and they did do it. But you know what I mean? It was just the slider was a bit too scaled down.
Yeah,
Honestly, the way that they responded is just so impressive. And it really shows that there is a bit of cohesion. Again, early in the season, I was wondering, especially with some of the some of the imports, what we're going with, Ginnivan, Chol,
yeah.
uh, is he, oh, getting Gunston back in. He
Gunston was a
kicked 4 goals,
huge,
one.
huge in
Yeah, he
for
got
them.
back into it. But you know what I mean? Like, it just didn't seem together, and you're wondering, you know, whether they wasted a few veterans, you know, to try and get the side. But they're coming good now. Really good to see. And another person that's come back into the side that Hawthorn have been solely missing,
It's Bill
uh,
Day.
Will Day. Absolutely beautiful in the inside midfield. He is classy. And, you know, as I said, when you got hard nuts like Warple and Newcomb also getting clearances, you know, they've become a decent midfield unit. As for Brisbane, Kyle Oman continues to impress as a forward. Obviously kicked 2 goals free, but you like to see his effort.
Hmm.
Jared Berry got plenty of the ball, and you know, Warple was getting a lot of clearances. He didn't have much possession, so you know he sort of ran with him, limited. Despite Warple obviously being good enough to get a bit out of it still.
Yeah, of
And the
course.
Big O, he outclassed Meek. He was still solid himself. Lockie Neal, 29 possession, 10 score involvements. In the third, he was he was one of the players keeping the Lions within arm's reach before it, you know, sort of got a bit out of it later in the game. Um,
Yeah, that seems
and
about
yeah,
right for Lockie Neal. He's normally the one that kind of stand up the most.
yeah, exactly. And you know, as I said, it was good because you know, as I said, um, yeah, like Hawthorn. I think one of the things is like you can have that sort of uncontested play, but you gotta like mix it up with chains,
Hmm.
with handballs.
Yeah.
And we saw it last year. Like, I think along with Brisbane, Hawthorn were like the biggest kick to handball ratio in terms of favouring kicks. Whereas now we're seeing a bit more chains. Obviously, Weddle is a big factor on that, either moving from halfback on the wing.
Hmm. Yeah,
Cam
that's right.
McKenzie, he was pretty great. He's turning into like a more, you know, he's got good movement, but he's also kicking a few goals now and getting a bit more involved in the forward line.
Hmm.
Um, the other Mac, Connor McDonald, had a very impressive game as well. And yeah, as I said, it's just yeah, as I said, it's looking a lot more cleaner for Hawthorn now, and
It's what
you know,
we've been wanting to see.
exactly, and they scored 100 points despite not having a forward line. Like, you know, against an air defense, but still, like, Brisbane haven't been that woeful the last few weeks. You know, so they'll be licking their wounds. And I haven't like talked much about Brisbane. I must admit, I only watched the last quarter of this game, and I didn't really have time to make
Yeah, I only
extensive
saw like
note
a
on
bit of the
these.
third and most of
You
the
know,
last.
you know, I'll try and like, you know, I'll try and give a bit of a look at Brisbane for next week's episode. If they're playing. No, they got the bye,
I
so
got the
maybe I
bye.
won't. But I'll talk about them eventually. Um, but yeah, so that's about all I can really say about that game. Very good by Hawthorn.
Before we go on to talk about, to briefly talk about the last two games, I want to go back to Dreamtime because I did actually watch the highlights of this game
Oh
because
yeah, that's right. We'll talk about it. Like, I have watched this game.
I was told that it was actually a pretty good game to watch. Like Richmond actually looked, despite being a somewhat convincing win by Essendon, it was a very good
Yeah.
game to watch as a Richmond supporter because we didn't just roll over like we've had the past
Yeah.
couple of weeks. We actually had some fight. I know Bolter went back down into the back line because Tyler Young was taken out. He then unfortunately did an ACL in the VFL. Very unlucky for him.
Yeah. That
Um,
was pretty upsetting.
so that's 4 ACLs that we have on our list, which is not very. 2 of them are defenders. One's a mid forward, and the other's a ruck. So it's not looking great. But we brought in Samson Ryan. I'm a big Samson Ryan fan. Like I do like how he goes about the game,
Yeah.
despite being so young and still so inexperienced. You might remember last year when we were in Adelaide, I think we watched Adelaide Richmond in the cabin,
Yeah.
and I was saying then that I was a big Samson Ryan fan.
Yeah, no, I do remember.
But yeah, so I'm glad that they brought him back in. He played a rock forward role, with Nankervis, which was good to see. Lafau going out, unfortunate look. Bolton also suffering an injury, not great for us either.
Yeah.
But we're already struggling as it is. But to our credit, our veterans did stand up, especially the famous one of all, Mr. Dustin Martin, wound back the clock with a thrilling performance.
Yeah.
I was very impressed from the highlights that I saw. Like it's good to see him stand up in the big games as he's kind of always done.
Exactly. And he just screamed good forward movement as well. You know what I mean? Like this was, when you say old, it's not just him getting a few more possessions and kicking 3-2. Like
No,
it's the Dustin Martin impact.
Yeah, exactly right. Like once if he's on, he's on. You can't stop him. To Essendon's credit though, like they had a really, really strong game, especially Nick Martin. Him in defense is insane. Like he's at this rate, honestly, I could see him being all Australian with how he's done so far this season.
Yeah, it's sort of like it's so weird. It's like he gets like that uncontested ball. It reminds me a lot of in terms of like the way people talk about his game as well, like Jake Lloyd. So as I said, he's getting like chips. Like sure, it's easy when you got like good interception game going on. Like their backline, I think's been much improved this year, despite me constantly calling
here's
it
the
one of its
statistic that
pains.
I actually looked at pretty much as I arrived back home is that Ben Mackay, he's won more games in his time at Essendon than he's had in his entire career at North Melbourne. Which
it's an
insane statistic.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what I mean? Like when you got that set up, it's great fans. Because we've seen halfbacks, like some of the teams I'm talking about, like they get the ball, but they and they get uncontested possession, but they can't find that way making with his kicks. he can lead like, I know they're not defined by their back half movement, but whenever it's in Nick Martin's hands, I can at least think, yeah, this has got a fair chance of going inside 50, at least the other way.
Yeah,
And
because he's
as I
he's
said,
very, very good with ball usage. He's got very good hands. He
yeah,
knows what to do when he's under pressure.
exactly. And, as I said, sometimes, you got to switch from a kick down the line to handballing to a chain,
Mhm.
So when you see, like, sometimes it's sexy to see, like, the 28 kicks, 2 handballs from a halfbacker, but, that's not always indicative of their doing the best decisions at the time,
Yeah,
especially for a fast team like Essendon, who can link up in handball chains. Talking about fast, the other person on halfback that had a pretty good game, Nick Hind.
yeah.
He was pretty
I
fantastic
saw
as
that too.
well.
I agree.
And, talking about solid people in defense, his back, Jordan Ridley. How do you play that good on your first game back? Like, that was insane.
He
He's
he
just,
he needed the break clearly, not just for his injury, but like for the just his mental health. Clearly done some
oh,
good just being away from the game.
yeah, exactly. And, like, it it's weird because, like, when you look at the individual players, like, I've had criticisms of, like, Laverde and Kelly. And, Kelly didn't do that much this game, but, you know what I mean? It's
I
just
thought
sometimes you need
Laverde had
that
a much better
player.
game than he did last week. Or at least from what I
Oh,
saw
yeah,
of the
you know
game
what I
last week.
mean? Like, honestly, you can make he's a team that makes his defense better. He's a player that makes the whole defense better. Like, he lifts other players.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And so sorry, I've just sort of drifted to talking about the Bombers.
No, I mean
But
I
I will
kind of led
say,
us to talking about the Bombers. Like,
yeah, Richmond, as I said, they were very impressive. I don't want to say, like, as I said, the Bombers, they wasted a few chances. Obviously, both teams did, kicking 14.
yeah,
I think Richmond, actually, with their control of the game, they're very hard not. It's very hard to win the ball against them. So I'm not going to, like, hugely knock the Bombers for that. I think it was just more, you know, I think the amount of intercepts that, you know, Richmond generated, I mean, you look at the turnovers and it's quite symmetrical. Essendon 11-3-69, Richmond 3-11-29. Like,
mm,
that's a difference between the game.
yeah, it really
Um,
is.
and as I said, in the other areas they're about even. So, and again, I don't want to be too critical because obviously when you're getting those turnover possessions, it makes toll players really scary.
Hmm.
And Richmond just don't have that at the moment. Like, I mean, Samson Ryan, it's good to see him back, but he couldn't really get into it. Noah Cumberland tried, but wasn't
I
quite on the
I
pace.
still do not rate him at all. I don't know.
No,
I don't know what
honestly,
people see in him.
um,
As much
I
as
did make
as
the
much as I
offhand
hate to be
comment.
negative on my own players,
Yeah,
I just never
I did make the offhand comment
really
because he
seen
wears
them.
38, and I was like, they've replaced Jake Arts with Jake Arts.
I
So
like Jake Hart.
I like Jake Arts too, but as I said, in terms of, like, not, he's good in terms of everything, but you know, and it's not just like direct goal kicking; it's kicking options forward.
Yeah,
Like, you can be a really good pressure player, but if whenever you win the ball, you're just turning it straight over, it doesn't mean that much.
yeah,
You're just
correct.
making pointless stats, really.
You're just
And
making
again,
up
this
the
is very
numbers rather
critical. I
than
know
having an
a player
actual
that's
impact.
retired now. I hope he's doing, like, well in the VFL if he's still playing there. And
I
again,
know
that's what I liked about him.
I
But
know Jake Arts is working in construction at the moment, but I don't know
nice.
if he's still actively
Well, I
playing.
hope he's a bit better at finishing in construction than he was at football. But yeah, I'm sorry. I don't want to be that negative because I said I did like Jake Arts. But you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
just they would like to have a bit more polish from some of their smaller forwards. Marley and Pickett, he's he's still playing really well. He just had the off night with 3 behinds. And yeah, as I said, Shea Bolton looked really threatening. Again, he was a bit in and out like he normally is.
hmm
He did unfortunately get subbed off in the last quarter.
He did.
I'm not sure how bad that injury was.
I don't think it was too bad, but
I think it was a neck injury.
He'll probably miss at least 1 or 2 weeks anyway.
Yeah, because it was the one where it was in the marking contest, and I think the knee went into his like neck and back region. And he was a bit sore.
That sounds correct to me.
You know, whether he misses from that or whether there's just like precautionary, yeah, it's a bit hard to tell. So we'll see in the team selection.
Well, I mean, we're going up against Geelong this week, and it's in Geelong, so I don't think it's going to be much of a contest.
I've watched Geelong the last 2 games at home. Richmond's got it in the bag.
I wish I could have that hope right now.
I mean, look, as I said, hopefully, that'll be a good thing where, like, again, Richmond, because as I said, like, they've only had, for as much as their injuries have been, they've only had 3 really bad games by memory. And a lot of those was in, like, the last few weeks.
Yeah, when our injuries have kind of been peak.
Exactly. So when you, like, look at it, and, again, I don't want to, like, you compare it to North, who have had not really that many injuries, you really can't fault them too much because there is only so much.
Yeah, because the difference between us and North Melbourne is that North are actually a bad team. As much as, people don't like to actively say it,
North,
it's kind of where they're at.
Yeah, and there's, again, like, one of the statistic things that I've looked at, that, me mentioning Willow ratings, like they do standard deviations of teams based off, their metrics and all of that. And again, like, I don't know exactly how it works. And like, I'm not going to say like it's pure science or like word is God, but they reckon North are 2 standard deviations. And if you're a scientist, that means 99.1 or 99.7 percent away from an average football team. So, it's not great.
But say what you want.
League average. League average.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So that's in 2024 content. So,
yeah, I mean, granted, it's not too difficult to be able to compare to prior seasons, considering the past couple of seasons they've been horrible anyway.
Oh no, yeah, exactly. But so they've got a lot. Yeah, as I said, Richmond, as much as they've gotten a bit of cut, and you know what, some of their senior players did sort of need it.
It is warranted, like especially against our older players, it is warranted. But overall, it's the injuries that have
overall, it's just
the injuries, new game plan, the loss of veteran leadership talent. It's kind of the big mix of problems.
Yeah, I think we can probably sum the game up. I should say for Essendon, Carl Langford kicked 3. Jake Stringer kicked 4.
Yeah, no,
And Essendon continue to be really good at stoppages in their forward 50. That's been another... Like, they didn't score that many off stoppages, but again, they're a bit like Richmond off turnover, where they were 1 goal 9. So, as much as Richmond could have had a bit off turnovers, Essendon could have converted a bit more. Essendon
have adapted the stoppage pressure game very, very well.
Yeah, exactly. So from the bits I'm looking, like they did look threatening, but so they just missed a bit much. I think Jake Gresham's 2 misses were from stoppages. He looks very threatening for them around that area. Didn't have a good night, but you know what I mean. Like, it's a very good compliment.
He got to play in his very first dream time, which is what he wanted.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't actually know he had Indigenous origins. So,
no, neither did I. It's very cool.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. No, it's yeah.
All right. Speaking of disappointing teams, shall we go to St Kilda really quick?
Yeah. Named Yurik for Sir Doug Nicholls Round. They were so wasteful in their forward half against Melbourne. As I said, leading to a lot of back-half movement and turnover scores for Nam to get that 38-point win.
Mm-hmm.
Gawn, I thought, was clearly best on ground. You watched probably more of this game than I did.
No, I fell asleep during this game. I was laying on the couch. I had
watched
it
the
on.
highlights.
I saw
Yeah.
a bit of the first quarter, then I was just gone.
Okay, so you went very early. Oh yeah, 27 possessions, 10 score involvements, 10 clearances, 89% efficiency
That's a captain's
against
game right there.
Rowan Marshall. Like, it was big. Yeah, for Melbourne, Tomlinson and McDonald feasted on the intercepts that the Uric were very generous to present. While Salem did very good work off halfback, sort of made a complete line for them. Varney was instrumental in the middle, also kicking a couple of goals. I think he's actually having probably a top 5 season at this rate. And I know that's a big claim, but he's just been so consistent this year. And yeah, as I said, well, I mean, it's early days. We'll see how it goes at the end. But yeah, very good by him. Van Rooyen, I think he had his biggest game for the year, 3 goals, 2.
In
He
terms
was
of
presenting well.
forward presentability, yeah, I think that's actually his biggest
Yeah.
game so far this season.
Exactly. And, as I said, he didn't have the best one-on-one defender. Dougal Howard took him on, and from what I heard, he was quite bad. So, as I said, but at least, if he can at least get some while he does have the better defensive matchups, which is probably what he's been missing. Because, as I said, when you have players like Ben Brown and, Bailey Fritsch attracting attention, you really got to take advantage of having lesser defenders on you. No offense to Dougal Howard, though, but yeah, I said he just had apparently a very bad game. Sinclair off halfback returned to a bit of form for the Saints. Their wing movement was very good with Woodhill and youngster Darcy Wilson, all being fantastic. And yeah, Higgins and King were really the only ones up forward for the Saints. King got 3 goals on May. That was quite good.
That's actually pretty good against May.
Yeah, I'm not sure if May had was too direct because he's got a lot of intercepts as well. So it might have just been he was playing a bit off him a bit more. But yeah, as I said, it was very much. It was concerning how bad the forward half game was for St Kilda. 1 goal, 2 off stoppage. It was pretty much all in their back half. 54 scores off turnovers, 50 off defensive half. Because obviously some of those turnovers would have been in the defensive half. But with the way that they were turning the ball over themselves, it just wasn't the way that they could play.
Yeah.
Because it was 80 intercepts to Melbourne for 66 to St Kilda. So while they were efficient from it, they weren't exactly generating. Again, that forward pressure is a lot to be desired. And, as I said, while I would have been, I could have said, oh, Jake Steele had an okay game. Like, the way that the Saints have been from that, I'm not really willing to say that, it's just been, I'm very hard to be very positive about what the Saints have been able to do anywhere in the inside midfield. It's really let them down a lot this year.
No, I agree.
It's honestly, it might be the worst midfield performance for the year in terms of, round by round. Yeah, as I said, Hawthorn's obviously had some trouble, but with the way they're going, they've at least been able to generate things at times.
Hawthorn are actually winning games as well.
Yeah, I know. As I said, I don't want to, but as I said, theoretically, Hawthorn could be winning games with other areas. But, I'm saying that Hawthorn are probably the next worst midfield. Maybe Richmond now, if you're not including their best players, like what they have on the park. They might be there.
Yeah, I can't fault you for that one.
Yeah, but, I will say Hawthorn, just for whatever reason. And they look miles better. So, yeah, it's something that's really concerning. As I said before, it's not just their forward line. It's
it's kind of all over the ground. Yeah.
It's leaking into their defense. It's also a bit of movement from halfback, as I said. Although Sinclair had a better game. You know what I mean? he was a bit more inside. So, it's like, do you get him involved more in the inside midfield, try and get that? But then you got people turning the ball over like half back, like, Riley Bonner was actually fairly good, but he has been known to turn the ball over quite a bit.
Yes, considering he has that it's that auspicious record that we mentioned,
Yeah,
back in
exactly.
Gather Round, I think it was.
And even on the wing, they still don't quite know what to do with Liam Henry. Like,
Oh, I found it. Here we
they
are.
can't.
Most turnovers by a player in a single game since 2012. That's
Yeah,
the record he
exactly.
now has.
And it's like Saints are one of the least teams to afford mucking around in their forward line, and yet they bring in a player like Liam Henry. They don't have any room for him on the wing because Bradley Hill's by far playing better football. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, maybe he'll be good in the long term if he retires this year and Liam Henry just slots in. But, that's where he was struggling with Freo. And, as I said, I don't think the Saints can afford to be playing him there when they're not generating much up forward. So, yeah, as I said, it's just confusing. And, as I said, it might get better in the long term. But for what the Saints were wanting to do this year, it's, pretty bad.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's kind of what we've been. Well, we expect a lot more out of St Kilda because over the past
Yeah.
couple of years they've showed a lot more promise, but now we kind of just want to see out of them what we've been wanting to see out of North, out of West Coast, and out of Hawthorn, and it's consistency. Just
Yeah,
give us
exactly.
something to be hopeful for.
Yeah, and it's not the nice feeling when you're making that concession as a fan, like so early into the season, making that realignment. So yeah, hopefully they can just find something positive. They get a chance against West Coast. We'll be talking about them a bit,
Mm.
both in the matchup and quickly covering their game.
Oh, yeah,
But yeah,
may as well transition to that now if you want. Wasn't a
yeah.
very pretty game.
Look, I'm just really going to summarize it because there was much to it. I will highlight a few good plays for Adelaide. Um, Walich Marawa, the Eagles, 0 to hero, absolutely thrashed by Kwana, who are Adelaide. Eagles just turned the ball over at both ends of the ground, more so up forward. And the stat that highlighted the night for me, Kwana, Adelaide had more effective disposals at 325
Mm-hmm.
than Marawa did in total disposals, full stop, 264.
Oh,
So I think, Adelaide got 410 or something. So it was about 70% of efficiency. But when you're having that much ball use as well,
yeah, that's about right.
And a lot of the effective one for West Coast were chipping it in their back 50.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the, where they were going well, it was the entire mid unit, inside and out. Dawson led the inside performance. Lockie Scholl had an absolutely fantastic game on the wing and his distribution.
Mm-hmm.
And Chase Jones, the other winger, he was a bit more offensively minded. 3 goals, 7 score involvements. I would like to say Quanah's defense. I know they're only playing the Eagles, but it's really come together. And I'm willing to say that Adelaide, I rate them as an above average defense now. Like, it was at the start of the season, a defense starting to come together. I think they have. I think you can lock in that this is a defense you can build around.
Yeah.
Like, there not much adjustments have to be made. Even missing Worrell, as I
Who's
said,
probably
they just
been
didn't have much.
who's probably arguably been their best player in defense.
Exactly. But Worrell goes out, Ball Ace goes in. Like, Ball Ace is still clearly a bit more of the fringier of the three,
Mm-hmm.
being Butts, Keen, and Ball Ace.
Yeah.
But in terms of a replacement player, absolutely fantastic. And, obviously it was way too easy up forward. Fogarty got 3 goals, 3 marks inside 50, 10 scoring involvements.
Mm-hmm.
And for the Eagles, Brass and Cole got a lot of innocent. That's about all I can say. Like, really, it was just, yeah, like, they were solid considering how many entries Adelaide had. I've forgotten the exact inside 50 count, but it was a pretty big creaming. 67 to 41. Oh, no, that's a Melbourne game, sorry.
It's pretty tragic to the point where
59 to 39.
It's pretty tragic to the point where Jake Waterman only got 1 goal, 1.
I know.
After
It's so sad, but
he's kicked what, like 18 goals in the past 4 weeks, something
yeah.
like that.
But as I said, you gotta respect it from Quana.
Mm.
Like, as I said, it's that back, like, it's cohesive. It's not just players on their own, it's how they come together as well. And, I've been saying it for weeks now. Probably Adelaide's attack is, well, at least not in this game, is like inhibiting Adelaide's defense. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no, I
they
agree.
should be scoring a lot more than what they had. Obviously, this game was a lot easier. 15-5 off turnovers, 11-3 off defensive half
Hmm.
scoring. You know, it's not going to get much easier than that. The Eagles were pretty much, by all metrics, pathetic, really.
Yeah,
And, I'm not going to say that about players, but, in terms of the structure, in terms of setting themselves up for at least a reasonable game, considering what they had last week, there was just no signs of that
well,
from the little I
maybe
watched
it's
of this game.
maybe it's just that they can win at home, but they can't win away, sort of thing.
Yeah, but you can have something like Hawthorn. Like, Hawthorn, I would give them a lot more props, even though they lost against Port Adelaide. Like, if you ask me to rate, like, no matter how impressive Harley Reid is, no matter how big the scalps that West Coast have gotten,
Hmm.
with obviously Fremantle and Melbourne, I'm gonna call Hawthorn the better team at the moment because you can see that going on. Like, it, the dam breaks if you put too many of those performances. Like, you can easily go into, no matter how, we've seen teams pull off impressive wins and then go on like a 10-game losing streak
Oh yeah,
because they put up pathetic performances.
Richmond.
And yeah, well, I said they went 4 games skid, pretty sure.
Well, the
Before
only
their
win that we
last.
have this season is against Sydney.
No, but in terms of effort, like,
Oh
they've
yeah,
had
no,
pretty
yeah, we've
much
had some games with solid effort. We just haven't
three
been able
games
to
in a row where
keep
they've
up.
been absolutely awful, and now they've turned it around a bit. But yeah, as I said, so yeah, as I said, Wallich Marawa now West Coast, for the remainder of the season. As I said, you still have that aim to be good at home, and I still hope they aim for that. But, Simpson will be very disappointed because, in terms of structure, you want a 20, like, even if you're losing, if you get 20, maybe 19 games of reasonable structure,
Mm.
you can set yourself up for next year. And no matter how good their wins at home is, I don't think they're going to improve too much, or at least as fans might hope, seeing, obviously the solid win against Melbourne, to what they have in mind. So, yeah, a bit disappointing there. But again, it is one game. And even some of the earlier losses were like a bit better than this. So if it's the worst performance of the year, I'll give them it's whatever. But
Yeah, as long as
it wouldn't want much worse.
well, again, they've won 3 games so far this season. All 3 of them have been at Optus.
Yeah, exactly.
So we just
So,
gotta hope that
I'm
they
not
can
going to say
show decent performances
something, because like even the one
outside.
against Port Adelaide to start the year at Adelaide Oval, like defensively they pushed them out. They still had periods. Sydney, in Sydney,
Or
as I
even
said,
when they
no, it
did the
was
coast,
in Adelaide. Sorry,
and even when they
yeah,
played Gold Coast and Gold
Coast to Coast
Coast.
game, yeah,
Yeah, it's
exactly. So as I said, this one, yeah, and I don't think I said the scoreline. It was 21-11, 137 to 5-8, 38. So
yeah, it was 99
yeah,
point of hell.
99 points, one away. I think the commentators are pretty upset with Quana not getting that 100. I do too. Like, it feels like a waste when you've watched such an emphatic thrashing and
And it's
it gets to
not
like
by 100
80,
or more points.
90. Exactly. You know what I mean? It's like, damn, like that was the only thing I was staying with this game for. But obviously, at least, for West Coast's sake, it wasn't. They can avoid that being at the season end tally if they get any 100-point wins against them.
Yeah, no, that's kind of just is what it is.
Yeah.
Now that we've wrapped up all of the games, let's talk about the ladder and the current standings because it's actually pretty interesting to look at. So we've got Sydney on top
Mhm.
That's not going to change going into this week because they have to bye and they're a game and a half clear. We've kind of already gone over that. Essendon currently sitting second. No one expected them to be sitting second, but here they
Yeah, I was
are.
going to say, this is the happy to be there group.
They still have, only by 0.5%, they still have the lowest percentage in the top 8. They have the lowest percentage in the top 13, actually, which is still insane to me. Second on the ladder, the lowest percentage out of the top 13 teams is nuts.
Yeah, it's pretty... Yeah.
But I mean,
It
that's
goes
what
to their
happens.
style of play, but also, like...
It's what happens when you keep winning close
it requires
games.
a lot of clutchness.
Because you're not getting
Like,
percentage
honestly,
from high scoring games.
give Carl Langford the keys to Essendon. Like,
At this point,
honestly,
yeah, let him run the hanger.
accurate. Exactly. Let him fly. Honestly, the Eagles get an eagle at their home game. Put Carl Langford in a fighter jet. Let him take a spin.
Give him a Blackbird. Why not?
Exactly.
All right, and then we got Port Adelaide sitting third on 32 points. They're half a game behind Essendon, but they're 2 games behind Sydney. We got 4 teams sitting on 28 points, being Melbourne, GWS, Geelong, and Collingwood. Oh, 5 teams actually. Sorry, we got Carlton as well, sitting in 8th position. Again, all of them higher percentage than Essendon. Don't ask me why; it doesn't make sense, but that's what it is. Then outside the top 8, it's actually pretty close. We've got Freo only half a game outside of the 8. The draw that they had just suffered is not a good look for them because winning that game would have pushed them into the 8. So it's very unlucky for them.
I don't think they have much claims of winning there. I think they're actually more happy with the 2 points, but
it could make a difference.
They've had some opportunities.
The second draw for Collingwood balanced them out. So they're only like a game behind technically. The Gold Coast Suns are sitting at 10th on 24 points with 108.2 percentage. They're only a game outside the 8, so it's still a pretty close run going into the bye rounds. Doggies sitting 11th on 20. Adelaide, Brisbane
massive 121.3%.
Yeah, I know that's a huge percentage. Because a lot of that would have contributed from them demolishing St Kilda, to be fair.
Yeah, and a few other teams. But as I said, it's just they've been close against good teams. But,
just
that percentage. They just
either they kick themselves out of it or they just can't keep up.
Yeah, as I said, refer to segment above in terms of being a bit too easy to score a ban.
Yeah, pretty much
against them.
Then Adelaide and Brisbane sitting 12th and 13th on 18 points each. 14th is Hawthorn sitting on 16 points with their 4 wins. I think they'd be pretty happy to be sitting where they are so far this season.
Mediocre percentage, but hopefully, they can keep that.
I don't think they're too bothered about percentage or even trying to make the 8 this season. I think they're just focused on
not at all.
Getting better and getting wins, perfectly great. But if they can play good teams close, I think that's what they're after, at least.
Like I said, they'll have a couple of thrashings left in the year, but as I said, if they can keep that to a few and notch a few wins, good on them.
And then 15th and 16th on 12 points each, but at a 20 percentage difference is St Kilda and West Coast. Sitting 17th is Richmond on 4 points, having only beaten 1 team, which is, funnily enough, the team sitting on top of the ladder. And then dreary old North Melbourne sitting at the bottom of the ladder where they'll probably stay for the rest of the season.
It's so hard when they're only 1 win away from a team, but in terms of performance, they are way far. Again,
if you're going to put tier brackets in between like a lot of these cases, you'd actually put a tier bracket between Richmond and North. That's how much of a difference there currently is.
Yeah.
If I was to have to actually do it, I put Sydney in their own tier because I think they're just by far the best team in the comp. I don't think there's any competition there. Then you'd probably put Essendon, Port, Melbourne, GWS in a tier together.
Yeah. I don't know, Collingwood's nearly there.
Yeah, but Collingwood's still sitting beneath Geelong technically, so you can't really do that unless you put Geelong in their own tier.
Yeah. Honestly, I still rate Carlton. Like, they've had...
Oh yeah, I still rate Carlton and Collingwood both fairly high. I'd probably rate them higher than
Yeah.
Geelong, actually, but the ladder just doesn't reflect that right now.
Yeah. Like, I'll put Collingwood and Carlton in their own tier, because I think they're a bit better than Fremantle Suns, who just haven't won against good teams, and the Western Bulldogs, who just can't put sensible games together.
Yeah, there is. So you put Geelong in their own tier for the moment, and we go Collingwood, Carlton in a tier, and then you'd probably put Freo, Gold Coast, and maybe the Doggies together.
Say Freo to Adelaide. I reckon Freo
to Adelaide.
I think
I agree with that.
Just been like, I mean, they're the Western Bulldogs, but worse essentially.
Yeah, that's true.
They're just so hard to get a measure on them, despite being okay on the metrics.
And then you probably put Brisbane and Hawthorn together, considering, well, Hawthorn just beat Brisbane, but, you know, Brisbane is still sitting higher.
I know, I'm still going to put Hawthorn below them. Like, Hawthorn, St Kilda, and then the rest.
And yeah, the rest. Can't do much more about the rest.
Exactly. West Coast, Richmond, North.
Yeah.
So.
And all right, let's take a look at this week's games and just have a slight chat about what we're tipping, because I think this week could be very interesting. So Port and Carlton at Adelaide Oval.
Yeah, should be a good match. I will watch this one. Normally I don't do Thursday games, but I got a friend coming over, Carlton supporter from my uni days.
Oh, yeah.
Going to be watching that with him quite well, hopefully.
Oh, yeah. I'll probably have it on. So
yeah, and
be a good game.
Yeah, it should be. Adelaide Oval, obviously, not the happiest hunting ground for Carlton.
I'd say home ground advantage for Port, but Carlton match up pretty well.
Yeah, I would say so. Like, I think the hardest thing, I reckon it really does come to like Zach Williams, because I think Port defend Toll fairly well this year. And so I think it switched before, you know, like Port was struggling Toll last year, and now they've gone like the opposite way. So yeah, it really depends. You know, like if they can bring the ball to ground, you know, or maybe Zach Williams, with his pace. I know it's not as fast as it used to be before the ACL injuries. But, you know, that might separate them. Obviously, it's going to be so interesting. Like, two dominant midfields, they like possessing. It'll be interesting to see where the chips lie when that happens. And, you know, in terms of, you know, I touched a bit about Port's defence. Carlton's defence, yeah, they're more periods. So I'm going to guess there's going to be a few big momentum swings that will probably even out to like a 10-point margin, probably to Port. But,
yeah, I think it'll be a close game.
Who knows? Yeah, but as I said, I don't think it's. I think it's going to come in waves. Like, this might be a game where you see like a big 20 or 30 swing in terms of margin.
Yeah. It could happen, absolutely. I might swing Carlton on that one, but I think the ins and outs might actually make the big difference on that.
Yeah. I like to think I adjust for the ins and outs, but normally I just put him in after the podcast and then forget about it.
Yeah, normally I put him in like day before and then just check the ins and outs depending on like the closer matches.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of, although actually I don't think this one might be close at all. Collingwood and the Doggies.
You don't think so?
Although it is at Marvel Stadium, so
yeah,
the Doggies do technically have a more home ground advantage, even though it's Collingwood's home game.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, honestly, you know,
contractual obligations, unfortunately.
So yeah, again, Collingwood's forward half pressure should match up on the Bulldogs because of what I said earlier. Like, they troubled to transition.
Yep.
So there's probably chances to intercept the ball early for Collingwood. In terms of the inside midfield battle, you know, with all the outs that Collingwood have, the Bulldogs should thrive there, you would think. Like, they'll get plenty of scoring opportunities. And yeah, it's really, honestly, it might just be how the defensive matchups go one-on-one, because I could see them getting shut out. Like, this is like, again, like a standard Bulldogs game where the range of results are so wide and it's so dumb.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I said, I would be tempted to still tick Collingwood. It's going to be hard with their outs. I think both were. It's like different, like the deficiencies they might have this week in forward line, but you know, honestly, Collingwood have just like in a contest of that, Collingwood have just found ways this season.
Yeah,
Now
they've
that they've
pulled
got the
out
defense patched
some
up.
miraculous, just
Mm.
miraculous in like plays to be able to just win
So
games.
yeah, probably one of the most 50-50 games of the round. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either.
We'll see.
It's tough.
You want opinions on this, but honestly, I'm gonna say Collingwood just to say a team.
Honestly,
I
I'm
might switch.
purely for the fact that it's at Marvel, I might go the doggies on that one. But
I feel like we switched like initially from what we first said.
I don't know.
You're like, oh, the Bulldogs should win.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I initially said that Collingwood should win, but once I realized it was at Marvel, maybe not. All right. Saturday games: Hawthorn and the Adelaide Crows at the MCG. This one will be much more interesting, I feel like.
Yeah, it's really how much Adelaide's offense has actually lifted and how much was just the quality of the opponents for the last few weeks. I know Hawthorn's not the best defensive team, but I think they can at least get pressure around the ground a bit more to maybe make it a bit harder than what it's been for the last few weeks for Adelaide.
Especially if
but at the same time,
Hawthorn's inspiring pressure roles have kind of come into their own recently.
Yeah, but honestly, Adelaide's inside midfield has actually been insane.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think they get Rankin back next week.
No, I think he's still out.
Oh, technically he will be back next week because but not this round.
Yeah, no, not this round.
Yeah, so yeah, as I said, but yeah, they've still shown a lot. As I said, it was a very complete performance against West Coast. I'm probably still edging towards Adelaide, but I really respect what Hawthorn's done, and it's not a decision I've made lightly, even though I've just thought about it for the best part of 5 minutes.
Yeah, honestly, it's another hard 50-50 game. I'm probably going to swing... I'm very tempted to swing Hawthorn, I will be honest. But Adelaide's midfield has been very elite like lately, and I'm very impressed with what we've seen of them. So I wouldn't be surprised if they end up actually having a really solid performance at the MCG.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, West Coast.
Now for the game that I would tip the most for being in the sum up 5-second coverage.
Yeah, West Coast St Kilda, and you just tip West Coast on this one because it's at Optus.
You do.
Just based on that alone.
Yeah, and with the way that St Kilda have been mucking around in their forward line, actually, West Coast will have plenty of intercept.
This is crazy to me. So it was only a couple of weeks ago. They most of their odds were never in their favor. They were always the underdog going into a game. They finally hit the point where they're actually favorites. Dang,
this might be a first in because I think I have tipped West Coast once this year. I think I got it correct, but yeah, it's crazy.
That's good for them. Granted, they're still sitting 16th, but they look good. Apart from the week just gone, they look really good, especially when playing at Optus. So you can't really fault them for being favorites in this case.
No, exactly. And yeah, as I said, I think I've ragged on St Kilda enough. It's not great.
We don't have to touch on them too much. We know that they're bad.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of another bad team, Geelong and Richmond at Shoebox Stadium.
Useless Geelong. Richmond have won 100% of their. No, wait.
That is very much incorrect. I can tell you that now.
No. Richmond have at least kept things close in their last game.
Yes.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm trying to make up some weird stat.
If we have... I don't think... Well, missing Bolton might actually be a big issue. Same with Lafau. Because Lafau's kind of been our only forward.
Yeah, exactly. I think
And I
what you
don't
want to see
know.
is just
I did have a look at our injury list the other day, but I don't know
Hmm.
if anyone key is coming back this week. So
yeah.
we just have to hope that our backline can stand up to Cameron and Hawkins and
Yeah, I think it's
Holmes
just going to
and
be a trying game for Richmond. Like, if they can win clearances, where I think Geelong's been very up and down this last few weeks.
like I'm not
Yeah,
expecting a win, but if we can play them
maybe try and
close,
defend out the
I'll be
skins.
I'll be
But
very happy with that.
honestly, if they keep it under 30, I think they'll be pretty happy. Like, I know it's not a great thing to say, but
That's just the
yeah, I
situation
just don't
we're
think they
in.
have the tools again this week.
It's
It's
just the
really hard to
situation
see
we're
them
in. We
winning
don't
away.
have much of a choice.
Yeah, it's a tough road trip,
Yeah.
even with Geelong's last couple of losses. Like, like they weren't that far off the pace against GWS and Port Adelaide.
No, they were
So
very close games. They just didn't win
yeah,
them.
concerning signs, but not like losing to Richmond signs.
Yeah, no. If they were to lose against us when we're severely undermanned, then they have some issues. But
Yeah.
I don't see it happening. They should bounce back pretty strongly.
All
Anyway,
right, and now we
no,
get to the third Northern Territory game of the season.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's at Alice Springs.
It is at Alice
Traeger Park
Springs,
at Alice Springs.
TIO Stadium.
Yes. No, Traeger Park. TIA's Darwin.
TIO Traeger Park. Yes, yeah. It's still the same place. Doesn't matter. Anyway,
No, it isn't. They're different. Like
it,
90%. We'll figure this out after the podcast. Yeah. Melbourne, Fremantle in
in
sloppy conditions.
Alice,
It probably favours Freo a bit more
because
in
Freo
terms
are
of
used to playing in warmer weather. For one.
it's different. Like honestly, we're not used to the humidity as much. Not that Melbourne is. Like
No,
uh,
have you seen how cold it is currently in Melbourne?
yeah, I
It's
know.
pretty cold out here right now. Very different to what I was
Yeah,
experiencing in Canada. Like,
as I said, Freo aren't quite used to the greasiness, but yeah, as in the heat will be somewhat in their favour. It's obviously hard to really gauge how much it will affect, but I think
yeah, because
if Freo play a territory game,
it's one of the
um,
locations that isn't played all that often. Like some teams are really hard to judge on the
yeah,
grounds that don't get touched very often.
exactly. So, who knows what will happen in this game? I don't think it'll be very high scoring. I think it's going to be like a 60 apiece sort of game.
Yeah,
Um,
I see it.
Again, I might take a punt on Freo, but honestly,
It's not a bad shout.
I think Melbourne really prefer that drier, like intercept-based game, especially with their forward line.
Hmm.
Like, they need like a massive effort from Cozzy Pickett, who's been a bit up and down this season. Because you imagine people like Fritsch and like I wouldn't see oh, they might even drop. I know it would be controversial, but Van Rooyen, because he hasn't really been that great in wet or sweaty conditions. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. But on the flip side, Melbourne are a very good contested team.
That's
Max
true.
Gawn, I think, the way things are going, might actually benefit because Freo are sort of forced to make that choice. Like, do they not play one of Jackson and or Darcy because it's so humid? You might just manage quote unquote Darcy this match, because you
Or
would think he would
or
have
do
a
you
lot less
keep
of an
him in to
impact.
match up against Gorn and then have Jackson
Exactly,
to be
because
able to match up?
Gawn, the best option against Gawn is to go with that two-pronged attack,
Yeah.
and you don't want him to control the game. So there's going to be a lot of interesting matchups. We'll see what team sheets say. But honestly, these games tend to be a bit of a coin flip anyway, unless you're really used to the conditions. So I'm just gonna go Freo because I like Freo.
Yeah, no.
Why not?
It's
They need
fair choice.
an actual win against a solid team. I hope they can get it from this.
It's definitely doable, especially with the form that they've kind of been in recently.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's just inefficient, and Alice Springs might make up for some of that inefficiency.
Speaking of warm and humid. We're going up to the Gold Coast for the final game of the round, being the Gold Coast Suns versus
People's
Essendon.
first.
I
Yeah.
could see this going either way as well, to be honest.
Yeah, it's like so weird. It's like territory on the outside versus territory on the inside. You know what I mean? Like, the Suns,
Like
they don't. I mean, they're both.
Essendon
They're both
have a
don't
really good run on the outside. Like they have great runners, they have great speed. They're very good at more stoppage games. Whereas Gold Coast, under Dimmer, it's because it's Dimmer's grand plan, as it's always been since he started coaching, is
you can get
pressure,
the turnovers. Turnovers lead to better attack, sometimes down the middle.
inside
sometimes
pressure.
just pass on the corridor. Not corridor. Wing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
And especially when you have, you
as
have Rao, you have Miller, you have Flanders,
Yeah,
Anderson.
exactly. Like, even when Gold Coast middles have been down, they've always been tackling. So, yeah, they might match up okay against Essendon. Yeah, honestly, I think I'll actually be forward half pressure because you'd imagine a few players might like a bit of looks. Essendon a bit more so. Obviously, their defense currently, I would say, is a bit better than the Gold Coast. And
I think Essendon's forward line is better as well, I'll be honest.
On paper, if you went name by name, not really.
I think Langford and Stringer have
at
just
the same
shown
time.
up so much better.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, I agree. Like, I think structurally they're just better at generating and converting. Like, I've said, like, Essendon's been, a bit, quote unquote, lucky, maybe, maybe a bit, they've had a lot of close games, but, those games have had some decent scores. They haven't scored under 70 a lot. So,
no, a lot of the games have been very close.
Yeah. So, I'll probably tip Essendon. I wouldn't be surprised if Gold Coast won. Again, they haven't dropped a game at home, have they?
I don't know.
I don't think they have.
Let me do
a lot easier games at home, by the way.
I'm gonna do a very, very quick check on this because I actually want to know. So give me a moment. I am on the AFL app because it's the fastest way for me to find it.
Beat Geelong, not home, but good as home.
Beat North at home. Richmond in the opening round. Adelaide round 1. Hawthorn. West Coast. North was at Darwin. Geelong was at Darwin. Yeah, okay, yeah, they haven't lost. They haven't lost at home yet.
Even their fake home games are good.
As long as they play in Queensland or Far North Queensland, they're fine.
Exactly.
Even though Darwin is the Northern Territory, but it's besides the point.
It's similar conditions in like that period of the season.
Yeah, it really is.
So yeah, it would be tempting to tip them. I'm not. It depends, but I like what Essendon's doing. I think they can still convert. I think it will be like the really good defensive teams that will give Essendon more trouble. And I don't think Gold Coast is that.
No, yeah. I mean, granted, Gold Coast have really good pieces in their backline. McAndrew is a very, very good one of those.
They're more run generating, and I think it's run generating and intercept more than one-on-one defensively. And it's also concessions. As I said, you can get a bit from your midfield as well. So
yeah,
while they're not good tackling, they're not that great at defending stoppages. So
no, I agree.
Which Essendon might be able to capitalize on.
And then, being that it's the first round of the bye rounds, which is I think 4 rounds this season, I believe. I think it's 13, 14. I think it's 12, 13, 14,
there is 15. Yeah, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Yeah, because for some reason they do 4 teams, some reason they do 2 teams, and they do 6 teams, and then they do the other 6. I don't know why it's split up like that, but...
So they get 24 rounds.
It is.
Gotta make the season longer. More television views.
Yes, money. But the players don't want the longer season because well, I wouldn't say it's killing them, but it's causing a lot of injuries.
I'm agreeing with you there. I think the stop-start and I think this has been a pretty
Like, I have
timing of
nothing
the season,
against.
but
I have nothing against having buys in the middle of the season. I think it's good. I think it's healthy for them.
no.
But
But combined with the opening round of
make
25
yeah,
is
and
just
making it
a
a
lot.
longer season is a lot.
And some of them, as I said, more than half of the season's going to be played in the back half,
Yeah,
and
exactly
they've
right.
had to.
And plus, you've still
Whereas
got
others,
finals as well for the top 8
like
teams.
there's a huge difference between the 11 bye and the 15th bye.
Yeah,
If
there
you're
is.
like, if you had a late opening round bye and round 15, you're golden.
Here's the thing: like three of the teams that played in the opening round are on this week's bye, being Brisbane, Sydney, and the Giants. So that's gonna really hurt them in the later half of the season.
It should have been opening round, yeah. Yeah, honestly. Yeah.
Oh, and then the fourth, and for audio listeners, the fourth team in the bye this week is North Melbourne, so it doesn't matter at all.
They won't lose.
That's true. But it's also not a draw, not a win.
Yeah. Progress. We call it progress. And first week this season, I guess there are the bye as well. Not getting 100 points scored against them.
Also true. I do have some other news that I'd found. Oh, actually, that was linked to us by Snap because it's the topic that him and I were discussing a couple of weeks back.
Oh yeah.
But I'm not going to touch on it this week because I'll be honest, I'm really tired. We've been going for a while already. We
can talk a few more things with the bye rounds,
Yeah, we're gonna have plenty of time as we get further into the bye rounds. Anyway, we did mention the rising star in the young Collingwood player that I'm already forgetting the name of.
Harvey Harrison.
Yes, thank you very much. We did briefly touch on injuries. I do actually quickly want to mention Luke Parker because the VFL upheld his suspension.
Sorry, 5 more weeks, I should say.
So 6 weeks in total, and he's already served 1.
Yeah.
For a pretty nasty hit, might I add. It was...
Yeah, 6 weeks may have been harsh, but in terms of the scope of a VFL player who don't get as much insurance, you don't really want to see it.
No, and it's not a great thing for Parker in general, because he's been trying to fight to get back into the AFL side.
Yeah, exactly.
And now it's just not going to happen.
Laughing to the bank, you know what I mean?
True, he is probably one of their higher paid players. But
yeah, so it's a good luxury to have when Luke Parker, he might find another team next year even, who knows.
Yeah, if he wants to play on. There's no harm.
The West Coast.
Honestly,
goes.
Honestly, even if we might only get a year out of him, we could probably use him at the moment.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Bring him down to Melbourne.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to send Luke Parker off to the...
No, honestly, I think he might be a one-club player. I think Luke Parker is going to be one of those kind of players.
He's a very proud person.
Yeah, he is.
And very well. I love him to bits, but...
if he was going to go anywhere, he might just go to GWS. I don't think he really wants to leave Sydney.
Yeah, probably not. But anyway, I hope he does what's best for him. He's still got stuff to give.
Yeah, he's got plenty of time on the sidelines. Anyway, I'm going to start winding this down because, again, I am tired. I want to go have a nap before I stream tonight. So I want to thank you all so much for welcoming me back this week. Thank you to Psyrick for holding down the fort whilst I was gone.
It's all good.
Next week, again, more bye rounds, so we'll have a little bit more time to talk about some extra things. Obviously, we'll talk about the round coming up. It's going to be very interesting to see what some of these outcomes are with how close some of these games are going to be, so we're really looking forward to that. Please follow us on the socials. I know the TikTok hasn't been touched for the past 2 weeks. I'm going to make a video on that and then do the normal announcement video that we do each week. But again, please go check them all out, especially my socials, because I'm going to be posting stuff about my Canada trip. I'm also debating on making a video about stuff that I bought and things that I did whilst I was over in Canada. I will keep everyone updated on that. If I do
might
make it,
upgrade my Instagram sometime in the next year. I might actually post a photo on there.
you should. It'd be nice.
You won't know when.
If I do make that video, I might end up just posting it on the Coast AFL Podcast YouTube channel, just so it's in a lot more noticeable place.
I get one free post on the YouTube channel for something of mine.
I mean, if you want, I'm not going to say no.
Oh, have you seen stuff I've created?
I've seen bits of stuff you've created. Maybe it's a dangerous request.
Very, very.
Okay. Anyway, we are rambling. Thank you all so much, and we are looking forward to catching up with you all next week. Catch you then.
Bye.